So good morning, everybody. We'll bring the special committee of the whole meeting to order at 8 a.m. and with an adoption of the agenda. And I'll ask for Councillor Moore, if you're willing to do that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Maskman. I will make that motion.
Great, thank you. Everybody in favor? By consensus? Don't see any opposed. So we've got a fairly big agenda today. I just do want to start off with a couple of notes. We thought maybe we'd take a break for about 5 minutes just prior to the start of the community groups at 9, so that we can continue through the community groups without taking a break. So we'll aim to do that. And also, I just wanted to note that Wednesday marks a very special occasion for the town of High River. Chris Prosser will be celebrating his 1-year anniversary with us. And I just wanted to say how thrilled we are to have him here and what a good year it's been. And Chris, you've shown incredible leadership. I'm speaking for all of council and Mayor Snodgrass as well. Obviously, you've just done an incredible job of leadership, and we appreciate all that you do for the town of High River, and we hope that the first year was a good year for you as well. So just wanted to say thank you and congratulations to Chris.
Thank you, Councillor Masterman. It has been a fun year.
1 year, yes. So we'll Chris, are you gonna take over from here, or
Certainly, Deputy Mayor, I can run you through a quick presentation on a couple of things and outline what the agenda is going to look like today. I'm just going to share my screen with you all. If I can figure it out this morning, it is early.
As Chris is doing that, just I'll watch for hands going up as well.
So this is budget meeting number 2. So today we're going to just go through the memo that I sent out Saturday morning on the follow-up, and I apologize for the nature of that. I noticed some spelling errors. Spell check did not pick up this morning on it, so I apologize for that. Just give you a quick little highlight on staff strategic priorities. What their scoring has come in as of Thursday last week. We still have some more scoring to come forward, and then we'll get right into the group, the meat and potatoes of it, the community group presentations, which we think will run for about 2 hours. And then if we have time, we'll get into conversations about the fee-for-service agreement framework, what that looks like, and show you, talk about examples. And then hopefully we'll have a quick discussion about tax and utility rate scenarios that were sent out. And then if there's any comments, and I've received a few comments on the draft community survey and the draft budget articles. So if there's any other comments from us, from council, we'd love to get those today so that we can get that rolling for end of this week and go from there. And then determination if there's going to be a need for a next meeting for the morning of October, on November the 9th, next week. And then we'll have questions, comments, and concerns at that point in time. So any questions about the agenda, how it's laid out?
I don't see any hands up.
So just as a summary and follow-up from the last meeting, the staff presented a balanced budget with a 0% tax increase proposed. That also included a 0% utility rate increase. I forgot to mention that. It is a revenue neutral approach using the 2020 revenue as the base. And then any increase in taxes will reflect increased level of service or a new service being developed, increased funding to the community groups, increased contribution to the reserves, or any new capital project that may come up with discussions with council, or any new operational project. We talked about signature events this morning already quickly. Maybe there's some additional funding from that perspective to be added in. So that's kind of where we developed the budget from, just as a summary for the public and for everybody where we started from. Out of that meeting, staff received a series of questions from council, and we followed up with a short briefing on October 31st. We outlined in that briefing what a series of different questions, from performance steps to corrections made in the draft budget, and were updated from that perspective. And if we have time, I'd love to roll through that. If not, the briefing is online, and I'll leave that up to Mayor and Acting Mayor and Council whether or not we proceed through it in detail or not at this point in time.
I guess,
But I can certainly.
I guess my question, Chris, would be, we've got till 9 o'clock or about
Sure.
5 to 9.
Yeah.
And if I think if council would find it helpful, or anybody listening would find it helpful, maybe you could just go through them in briefly at least.
Yeah. So one of the first questions we had was about an estimated surplus. Right now, we're estimating the surplus of about $4.8 million. Actually, let's go back. About $4.8 million, and this may continue to decrease as projects get completed and projects get initiated near the last quarter of the year. There are some things that, from a timing perspective, will take place in the next month and a half to be completed. Community group funding has the increase of community funding is not in the base budget, but the $801,000 is in the base budget. So the current level of funding that was approved from council from 2020 remains in the budget. Any increase to that level of funding will be a council decision based upon the presentation that they received today. And then that would be added to the base budget, either through use of accumulated surplus or a targeted tax increase from that perspective to cover the $46,000 that is proposed to be the increase. We had questions about COLA, or cost of living allowance. Cost of living allowance for staff is not in the base budget. We have calculated COLA, or cost of living, at 1.3% based upon the rolling average on the Calgary marketplace from July 2020 or 2019 to July 2020. Steps only, from a staff increase perspective, steps only within the base is included within the base budget, and that amounts to about $130,000 this year in the base budget. Now, steps, I'll get into further detail about what steps looks like. That would be the worst case scenario if everybody achieved their step, and if with the framework that we have currently, that may or may not occur. COLA at 1.3% would see an increase of about $139,000 to the base budget, and that is not included at the current time. And if COLA is applied, that will impact steps because it's a 1.3% increase and applies to every category. So we'd see a slight increase from $129,000 or $130,000 to about $131,000. So about $1,000 increase based upon that percentage aspect of things. So that would be the impact from the steps and COLA perspective. We had a question come in about asset management. We have in the capital side of things $142,000 allocated for asset management, and that's the work with us continuing to get our cartograph software system up and operational. And that will be primarily converting data and information and transferring that into the system so that it's clean, it's concise, and it's truth. It would also be aligned with our GIS system to ensure that it's accurate. From a labor capacity, I think, at our current rate, we're probably about 12 months away from having the cartograph system completely operational, and to a point that we trust. And that will be getting the preventative maintenance system and the work order system operating as well. Integrating asset management into the capital plan will be another step within this process and can be done concurrently, but it may require additional resources. So either seeking grant funding from FCM or additional taxation to help us speed up that process and go forward from there. I think there's a couple key pieces that are missing from that perspective, and that's really taking a look at an asset investment strategy on how best to fund our asset replacement. And we kind of do it right now because we set aside about approximately 2% going into the capital infrastructure reinvestment fund. But is that enough? And that's something once we get the inventory and how much the actual cost burden to replace all the infrastructure is going to be. Now, like I said, the last meeting, asset management will never be done. This is just a circular system that once we get something finished, it goes into the system, and then 25 years later, we're talking about it again. And hopefully we're building stuff that's going to last longer than 25, 30, and 50 years. And then that affects our modeling from that perspective. So it's a journey, it's a process, it's something that will never be finished. And we just need to come to grips that we have to reinvest from that perspective. We've got a couple policies that we probably need to that would help us, especially from a new capital perspective, and that would include the capital priority setting process, as well as a financial framework of some kind that outlines the different ways to fund certain things. And let me be clear here too, debt sometimes is a bad word in municipalities, but sometimes debt is a good option to fund capital replacement. It provides an opportunity, and right now with the interest rates so low, off our reserves, we're generating more revenue off our reserves than we would be paying in interest if we borrowed money. So it's one of those things that when opportunities exist and when the time is right, that can be a good function to fund capital replacement from that perspective. It is feasible to phase it. I don't think we have to do it all at one time. Certainly staff would like to have it snap of the fingers and have all the answers for council. But we can phase this over a period of time, and we can certainly take this as a more methodical, slower approach from that perspective. And we can make sure we do it right. And I think that's the key with any asset management system is make sure you do it right and you take your time and you get all the information in there. And council can only make good decisions with good information. And when you don't have good information, we can't make good decisions. And I think that's the foundational principle of asset management from that perspective. We had a question come in about flat parcel taxes, percentages, and flat utility rate increases. And I wrote just a few lines quickly on what a flat parcel tax is. Sometimes a flat parcel tax is appropriate. And certainly when you take a look at, say, a road, arterial road rehabilitation, a flat parcel tax or a flat tax is probably the best way because everybody benefits from that asset. Recreation center, same thing. A flat parcel tax is probably the more equitable way. And you get into this argument, and this argument exists because of our property taxation system, and you get in this argument about the ability to pay. So the higher assessed properties, people will argue that they have a higher ability to pay, so they should pay more money. So, for example, those seniors that are in condo associations have a higher assessed value usually. Do they really have a higher ability to pay because they're seniors? Not necessarily. So it's, when we get into our neighborhoods and when neighbors are having different assessed values and different impact from taxation, sometimes a percentage tax increase does not make a lot of sense when you're talking about a specific asset abutting that property. And so you've got to take a look at different formulas and different ways of doing that brings in some equity into the taxation system from that perspective. And it's one of those philosophical conversations, right? Certainly, some of the homes that are, say in Montrose that are, $100,000 or $200,000 higher than the other parts of Montrose, would argue the fact that they don't have the ability to pay the same, but they are more exclusive or more separated or segregated from other parts of the subdivision. So it's a philosophical conversation about taxation, which is the best way, percentages, flat taxes, partial taxes, and utility rates and fees and how we fund different things. And that's going to be an ongoing conversation that we have every budget, not just this one, but at every budget from that perspective about what's the best method for getting the revenue that we need to do a specific project, to complete specific things, or whatever the target may be. And that's why I wanted to start that conversation there. The utility diversion is one topic that we'll probably get into more detail, and we want to spend a significant amount of time with council about this. This year may provide us a great opportunity with our surplus that we're seeing. And we haven't really figured into our surplus the money from the most side of things from the province to offset the COVID expenses and the loss of revenue that we have. So we may have some impacts from that funding too. But we think that there's an opportunity here to have a conversation with council to either accelerate the termination of the diversion or to eliminate it. And this, combined with any potential tax increase from council, it would be a good conversation to have. And it's not saying that we should do it. It's just saying that we should have the conversation, because this may be a great opportunity to take advantage of speeding this up and changing the philosophy from that perspective. One thing that we need to think about combined with that diversion is flipping, when we're doing, so, and I mentioned this in the last meeting, flipping how we fund sewer and water main replacement projects. And that road portion in particular, if we're not increasing the road capacity, if we're not expanding the road, if we're not increasing the thickness of the asphalt, sewer and water main replacement projects probably should pay for the road replacement, because there is no other way, and the technology is not quite there yet that makes it capable of going in and replacing those sewer and water lines cost effectively without digging up the road. If that happens, because we currently fund most of our road replacements with those projects out of grant funding, either MSI or gas tax, flipping that allows us to use that money for other purposes. So expanded active transportation networks for the gas tax, increased MSI money for further road rehabilitation in other parts of the community that may not have sewer and water lines needing to be replaced, or increased playground expenditures, or increased improvements to our recreation complex. So it frees up some cash, and the modeling, as we're still kind of expanding that out, it does give us some opportunities and some more flexibility to reallocate that funding from that perspective, provided MSI stays alive and stays alive in its current format. If MSI disappears and we don't make that flip, we'll probably have a more difficult time funding main replacement when it comes to the road side of things. I apologize for some of the errors when we transferred some data from the Excel spreadsheet to my report. We missed a couple of line items. So on page 15, there was supposed to be 114.9 for the Memorial Center, and that is still in the budget, because that comes up to the total of $801,000. So I apologize for that transfer of data when we were reformatting things. New initiatives, council saw the list of new initiatives. Again, that will be a separate conversation that we want to have with council, probably after we get the survey results in, to hear where the public would like to spend some dollars, and have that conversation from that perspective. But there are some key ones in there, including online public consultation engagement software, or web-based software, asphalt replacement, and some philosophical conversations about turf management and turf and park space management as well, that may reduce overall costs, but it's that philosophical one from a protection of the environment perspective. We did provide clarity. There was a question regarding the increase for corporate services administration. We've seconded an employee to a different division at this point in time. That person will be coming back in 2022 and 2023. So that was the main reason why we saw the increase in those 2 years to that salary perspective. So that was addressed from that perspective. We had a salary and wage category, and it's a little bit tricky here because there's a credit high up in our salary and wage category of $510,000. So when you add up all the numbers, and I did the math as well, it comes up to $14,532,740. But when we take the $510,000 credit, which is based upon attrition and vacancies that are consistently happening over the year, that's a $510,000 credit that we see. That reduces it down to $14,022,740 for our total staff salaries. Now, are we in the ballpark for other communities? Yes, and everybody's going to argue about how much staff is enough. And I think it's a conversation that we have to have an ongoing debate about what is the ideal staff complement within this organization as we continue moving forward. What is the level of service that we get for that staff complement? Are we providing the right services to our public? Should there be more staff in parks and roads, for example, than in other aspects of things? So it's a conversation that every year we'll have a conversation about budget as it relates to staffing complement, and based upon level of service conversations as well. But we are in the ballpark, probably on the high side. And if anybody's read a couple of financial reports that have come out recently from some think tanks that are out there. We're in the middle ground in the middle of the group when it comes to towns in Alberta about our staff complement. So we're not quite at the 50th percentile, but around there. We're right in the middle. Can we be lower? Certainly could be. Could we be higher? We could certainly be higher as well. But I think there was one study that was released about the cost of services per taxpayer per capita, and we're around $2,300 and change or something along those lines. That puts us at about 47th out of 99 towns in Alberta. So I think we're sitting okay, but it's something to monitor and make sure that we're always trying to do our best pragmatically and consistently from year to year, and allocating those services where they need to be allocated, and not necessarily just sticking to the status quo. Communications, there was a question about the 50K that was in there, and it was just a shift from in the operating side to the capital side of things. We're also looking at the philosophy, instead of having an ongoing update to our website, is a refresh on a regular basis. So not a major rewrite every 3 to 4 years like we're dealing right now, but a more regular refresh of our website annually, so annually or biannually or every 2 years. That would give us a different look and a different appearance, so people, when they came to visit the site, always felt that we were current and up to speed. So that's kind of where we sit with the website perspective. Wayfinding was reclassified. It was a portion of the money was allocated within the operating budget and portion in the capital side. It was determined that it should all be in the capital side, and so there was an error in the operating budget that we had circulated. So we had removed that from the wayfinding, and so it's about $400,000 of grant funding, both a combination of MSI and recovery funding, that is allocated to the wayfinding, and we're still waiting on word from the province about the extension to our recovery funding coming forward from the province. So we should be hearing from that soon, hopefully by the end of November. That would give us that perspective. So hopefully that clarifies that question. Charles Clark medical lease. We do have leases expiring at the end of 2021. And we are looking at our overall agreements from that perspective. And this is something we want to bring forward to council for a further in-depth conversation, because I think it's a full committee of the whole, or because we're going into negotiations and in-camera meeting to talk about what we want to do there, how we want to deal with it. And I think there's some options there. And I think with our overall responsibilities on that site, including snow removal, asphalt replacement, line painting, parks maintenance, sidewalk maintenance, there's additional costs on top of those leases that aren't truly accounted for from that perspective. And the number, I'm trying to get the number, I think there's in the math there, the number that we were talking about among staff when we're taking a look at our leases that were coming up there, we pay about $274,000 in general, and then we net out some rental revenue that comes back from the municipal enforcement side of things, but I don't know all the detailed math on that. But the philosophy and concept of sharing that space and having that kind of program with the doctors is a good one in concept, and we just need to make sure that the right agreements in place for our taxpayers, not just from the funding side of things, but the retention of the doctor side of things as well. And so we have to have those ongoing conversations with the landlords and make sure that we deal with those. We have had some issues during COVID regarding the landlords shutting off spaces, no public access, signing out keys for washroom use, those types of things that has caused us some concerns, and we're working through those with them right now. But we need to look at our renegotiation aspect things, because we do have leases expiring at the end of 2021. And we need to make sure that we're making the right decision, and council has all the information from that perspective of all their options. On page 159 of our operating plan, there was a transfer to reserves typo. It says 31 million for banners. It should have said 31,000. If those are banners at 31 million, they should be coded in gold, and we should be building a new recreation complex if that's the case. So I apologize for that. And then utility rates, I highlighted this. Right now as it stands, unless council gives us direction, we're recommending no increase to our utility rates. Stand pat. We're entering negotiations with the county about services outside our boundaries, and we're not sure exactly how that will financially impact our operations and how that will increase our revenue. But we wanted to make sure that we stood pat on utility rate increases at this point in time, especially on the sewer and water revenue side, to budget and be prepared for any increase in revenue coming from the county aspect of things. Parks and Open Space Master Plan, we've been going back and forth. It's been a year. I've been here a year. It was one of the first open houses I attended in late November. I think it was a blizzard that day, and low turnout. So we've been going back and forth with the consultant. We weren't happy with the 75% report that they submitted back in the spring. We sent that back. They were actually only really at 25% is our thought. So the planning department has been going back and forth, and I see an email from our manager of planning services, Khalid, this morning that he's ready to sit down with me and talk about the plan and feels comfortable taking it to the next stage with council. So we're going to be bringing that forward as well. There are some things that we're working on concurrently. So part of this is looking at the open space master plan as well, and that green space management. And the pedestrian bridge is certainly a component that it was messaged within the early forms and early drafts of the open space master plan. We do have some money in the budget that's going to be carried over, about $35,000, and we're hoping to hear from FCM before the end of the year about our grant application that's in there for that project, as well as how it links into our current active transportation process and linkages. Now, FCM has told us they're oversubscribed, so we've had to submit additional information from that perspective. I see Don had his hand up.
Yeah, Don, I should have, I guess I should say this, if you have a question as Chris is talking to any of council or admin, if anybody has a question about a point he's just talked about, if you raise your hand, or just jump right in and ask it is probably even better. So.
Yeah, like I should have said that too, Deputy Mayor Masterman, is just jump right in, interrupt me, and feel free to ask questions at any time. This is odd for me doing it virtually, and not seeing the body language and just seeing the headshots. I can't see what people are doing and what they're writing down, so that I could take that mental note to say, hey, you have a question, and go from there. So and it's hard for me to be looking at the heads on the side of the screen and what they're doing. So Don, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I actually had my hand up since the very beginning, so I wanted to ask a further question on the first topic about the forecasted surplus from 2020. You have it predicted at $4.8 million. My question was, is that included in the budget already for 2021 to bring it to that 0%? Or is that amount of money yet just transferred to reserves?
No, it's not included in the budget to bring it to 0%. We've left that as an accumulated surplus for at the end of the year that council could either allocate it to reserves or help with this diversion that we're talking about as well, from that perspective. So, the base budget includes the $3.4 million going into reserves. That is about, I think it's 16% of our water, sewer, and taxation revenue going into reserves. And that does not include any portion of this $4.8 million.
Okay, so that would then make a difference to anything that we add on.
That's
it's
correct.
Not going to really increase it as much as we expect. Am I right in that assumption?
That is correct, Councillor Moore. And council can use this accumulated surplus for, like I said in the previous part of the presentation, to offset the increased cost for community groups or any new initiative that they may feel comfortable moving forward with. So that's available to them. Our perspective is that we use this surplus as assisting us in speeding up the diversion reduction, and looking at a kind of a tax stabilization fund for the longer term use from that perspective, so that we can keep taxation levels level and consistent over time, instead of the large spikes that we see in other communities, one in Alberta and across this country, that we're seeing large taxation spikes.
Thank you, Chris. The last part of that question is, I know that you received a grant for our COVID expenses. Is that part of a projected reserve or projected surplus?
Leanna, I'll get Leanna to jump in if she can. It is not part of our projected surplus.
Okay.
We don't know exactly. We have to go through all our expenses to date and what we can apply it to. Some of that may apply to some outside agencies if we have sufficient funding available, like for example, the library or the Highwood Center, or those types of agencies. And we're still learning the rules associated with what we can use the money for. So, all the expenses that we did for dividers is certainly coded for there. Any relaunch expenses, increased staffing and increased cleaning, we can use it for. We are having a conversation about increased our staffing costs associated with operating the EOC especially for the first 6 weeks of the emergency, and covering those costs from the $1.4 million is what we'll be receiving. And there's a couple conditions attached to that funding. We have to come up with a red tape reduction strategy of how we're reducing red tape, and then report back how we've used the money. But the province is pretty lenient on that, on how we're using the money. So we're trying to be as creative as possible.
Great. So the possible $1.4 million is yet to be put into any budget.
That's correct.
Good. Thank you.
Chris, do you need any more clarification on the MOST grant? I think you did a very good
certainly,
job.
Leanne, if you have anything else to add, mine was pretty high level.
Yours was very high level. I think it's because a lot of the guidelines have not been released. This one grant is very loose on how we fund it. It's very similar to our MSI operating, with the stipulation of the reduction on the red tape. I know I've been working with Christine with the county on some of the possible reductions. We do also have to look at if we see reduced costs, say within our shared services agreement within our fire department and our rec complex, are we passing those savings over to the county and going to cover that with the MOST grant as a lost revenue from our shared services agreement. So that's still all under negotiation. And the county wants to ensure that all of their shared services agreements are managed similar. So they're not having High River is doing it this way, the Turner Valley is doing it this way, Black Diamond's doing it a different way. They want consistency. So we're working with Christine. We're just ensuring that we're doing things consistently.
Thank you, Leanna. Any other questions about the surplus or the MOST grant? Okay.
Don't see any hands or don't hear any questions, Chris.
Okay. So that was the Parks master plan that we just closed off, and then we'll get that to council. I think we're probably targeting, because of budget dominating the next month, the 6 weeks, and then of course Christmas season in there, probably early January, to have a conversation with council about Parks, the next draft of the Parks master plan, and how that rolls out to the public. So I'll sit down with Khalid later this week, and we'll have a conversation about the next step of the process from that perspective. And then there was one question that came up during the meeting that we provided a great amount of detail on the step increase system and how it works for the municipality. And I can run through how that works from that perspective. So we try and provide a fair and competitive staff compensation program for all our employees. We want to make sure we attract and retain excellent talent throughout the organization, and we reward those employees for staying with the organization for a longer term. And there's a couple of things that you can think about here. One, we can be an organization that is training people to move on to the next level, and we lose them and we just spend those dollars and they're here for 3 to 5 years, and we cycle through people and go from that perspective. Or we become an organization that becomes a preferred employer that retains people, that we treat them with respect, we treat them with we reward them for great performance, and that we retain employees for the longer term from that perspective. So a couple kind of key philosophy, two ends of the spectrum, so to speak. We do market comparisons across the province of Alberta regularly, and that helps inform us of where our market sits with our employees. And coming from BC, I can say pretty decisively that there is a salary gap between other provinces in Alberta, and I think that's really driven by the oil and gas sector driving up wages and loss of employees going to the higher payer jobs in the boom bust kind of economy. And we're certainly in a bust portion of the economy right now, and staff salaries don't necessarily reflect when the market goes down. So we take a look at the market and we determine position by position whether they're at market value, below market value, or above market value, and make those adjustments regularly. Every organization is different in their composition, so it's hard to compare apples to apples. To be clear, we have to take a deep dive into job descriptions and understand what the responsibilities are. But we do our best to compare those apples to apples perspective, and then we make sure that we're comparing equal positions for equal pay. The process starts, fairly early on when there's a new hire come in. They're placed on the salary grid, and there's lots of factors considered there. One, experience within the comparable roles outside the organization and qualifications, their internal equity to make sure that somebody coming in is not being paid more for the same position than somebody who already is in the organization. Their tenure, what the external market is for that position. So equipment operators, when there's a boom economy taking on, it's hard to find equipment operators. We're probably 50% less pay than working within the oil and gas sector for equipment operators. Entry level is at step 1, and then it ranges up from there. And the salary, there's 3 kind of grids that we work on here. One for within the employment association, one for out of scope staff, that's all the exempt staff, and one for the firefighters, because that's pretty unique as well. And within the employee association, there's 6 salary steps. Within the fire grid, they work on a fire class system, so it's fundamentally different than anything else that we're doing here. And then the exempt and out of scope pay employees work on an 8-step grid system. So the steps are kind of awarded based upon merit, and it has to be demonstrated from the employee and from that perspective. We look at satisfactory performance as the gauge, and achievement of goals and contributions to the priorities that are set out. Typically, on every anniversary date, the employee will receive 1 step increase based upon their performance from the previous year. Each step represents 4% salary increase. Upon their hire, and every hire letter and every contract that we have, performance or reviews are identified that they will be done on an annual basis. And subject to those results of your annual review will affect your salary and the budgetary allocation of council. So you may be eligible or you may not be eligible for salary increases based upon that statement that's in all the hire letters. Performance of our employees is kind of defined and determined through the annual goals that are established by the leader in that in that division or that team. Ongoing timely feedback. We can't have performance evaluations where we make a list of what they're doing wrong from January 1st to December 31st, and then January 15th and said, hey, going all the way back, this is what you did wrong. We need to be tackling that like right away. We need to be correcting those behaviors so that we give our employees the opportunity to be successful in what they're doing here. A performance evaluation system that just kind of builds up the negativity is not one, a great culture, and two, it's not a great process for anybody involved in that perspective. And we don't want bad behaviors continuing on for 12 months or 18 months at a time. We want to correct those right away when they happen. It includes, the performance evaluation includes the employee self-assessment, how they're doing, so their opinion, how they've been performing, their leader's opinion, and then they have a multi-rater assessment, which is kind of like a 360 review process by anonymous individuals within the organization. So they'll be all people that either report to that person or that work closely with that person in some form or fashion that understands what their job's been doing, and there'll be a 360 review from that perspective. Through this performance measurement perspective, discussions and the annual rating is ongoing, and we make that determination whether they're due a step or not. When they're not eligible for a step, the leader has to work with the HR to have that conversation to address those performance concerns. And it may be, you know, part of the process, maybe not the lack of knowledge and lack of understanding of how we do things and coming into a new workplace, or there's different other parameters. What's going on outside affects people's performance as well. What's going on in their personal lives that affects performance. So there's a whole raft of different variables when it comes to employees' performance within the organization and what that looks like. We want to try and be reflective and comparative to the market, and so we're trying to be dealing with that consistently. So we do that external compensation review, and we align that with comparable market rates. We also take a look internally to make sure that similar positions are being paid the similar rates, so that, you know, for example, CSRs here are not being paid less than CSRs at the rec center, and so we want to make sure that that is a consistent approach across the organization. Cost of living is one of those things that is always a difficult conversation, because some entities never give a cost of living increase. Some entities do, but we base it on July CPI from year to year on a rolling average on the Calgary marketplace. And that's been approved. And then that's based upon approval from council. And then salary step increases, they acknowledge the overall employee performance and the achievement of goals and priorities. And now that we're getting clarity on goals and priorities within the organization, I think it's going to become an easier process, and we can always learn how to make it better. Performance evaluation is not a perfect process. There is no perfect way to do it. And it's about grooming and nurturing and cultivating your employees to make them better over time than it is to see exemplary performance right off the hop. We want to make investments in the right people and take people where we see talent and talent as individuals as the right fit in the organization, and give them the right skills to be successful doing what they have to be doing within their job description. So that was the summary of all the questions that we received from council, and I think that covers most of it. That's, if anybody has any questions from this point, I'm here to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? I've got one, but if anybody else has any questions, you can go first. So Chris, I'll just quickly, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, thanks to Councillor McMillan prior to the meeting, but one of the, in your earlier comments, you talked about some policies being developed to perhaps cover other expenditures, and I just wouldn't mind if you just spoke on that just for a minute. Things like, say the discussion we had a few weeks ago on the Hospital Foundation, the town grant, and maybe any other groups that the town, you know, could be providing annual funding for. If you could just speak to that briefly, that would be great.
Certainly. And you know, we are working on a whole host of policies. This one would be new from that perspective, providing funding to as a kind of a grant and aid or something along those lines to the foundation. Now, even though it's not specified in the budget right now, there is money available within the current base budget within council's public relations component, that if there is funding that council wants, depending on this level of funding that council wants to provide, there could be sufficient funding to provide that level of funding. So that's going to depend on that number, but we'll always be able to find council funding to do something that they feel is a priority. And we would reallocate it from one line item to another, or bring it forward from operating reserves or from surplus. So we are working on policy associated with, the conversation we had about the hospital foundation and providing some stable ongoing funding from that organization. And I think that brings into our overall conversation about grants in general, because there are grants issued in other departments that are budgeted for, but may not be fully aware of through the council process, or awarded through the council process. And we're going to try and make that work a bit differently from that perspective, and make sure that council always is in the loop, has the approval process on who's getting those grants, so it's not a staff decision from that perspective. So those are the policies that we're working on. There's other policies as well that we're working on from a financial perspective, including a financial framework policy that kind of outlines different components. And I think in the original briefing that I had prepared, we had sketched together the skeleton of what that looks like, as well as the capital priority briefing as well, that talks about how to set capital priorities. So there's a whole host of financial policies that we're working on to provide better clarity, to better align with where council wants to go, because direction changes from year to year. Direction is not consistent over the next 10 years. It changes from year to year, and the needs within the community need to be adaptable and flexible. And council needs to have policies in place that allow them to be adaptable and flexible to ever-changing needs. And so that's kind of what we're trying to interject in here, and make sure that we're reviewing the policies on a regular basis, and making sure they're current with council's existing direction, and that they're serving the community for the best needs possible. But that's kind of the synopsis. Deputy Mayor covers what you're asking.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thanks so much for that, Chris. Are there any other questions? I think we've actually got about 13 minutes before we go into the community groups, unless there's an appetite for starting a few minutes early. I don't know if that's fair to them or not. Chris, what do you think of that?
I think we stay for 9 a.m. Deputy Mayor Masterman, and just have our bio break a little bit longer from that perspective. And if everybody can put their microphone on mute and their camera blank. We had some conversations taking place in the office last week, and I have to apologize for that we couldn't track down who was talking, but we want to make sure that everybody puts their microphone on mute from that perspective. So.
Yeah, that would be great. Why don't we take a break for about 10 minutes, and then we can start right at 9.
That's good.
We'll see you just before 9 then. Well, I think we'll get going. It's just coming on to 9 now. I understand that perhaps the first presenter is the library board, or maybe not here yet. Kara can confirm that. And just as we're kind of waiting to start, a reminder to all the groups that are waiting to present that you've got about 10 minutes tops, so please don't read your entire presentation. We've all seen it, so just hit the highlights, and we'll save any questions from counselors until after the presentations, but I'll be watching for hands going up, and I'll take them in the order in which the hands go up. So, okay, any word on the library? Chris, any word on the library?
Hi, Councillor Masterman. So we don't actually have the library in the waiting room right now. We do have the museum or the memorial center if council wants to proceed with one of them first.
Okay. Did you say the museum, Kara? Are they
That
waiting?
is correct.
Okay, we'll take the museum first then.
Good morning.
Good morning. You go ahead and you can proceed. I don't know if you heard my comments. This is Bruce Masterman. Not sure if you heard my comments earlier. We're giving each group about 10 minutes to present. We've got quite a number of groups to get through in a couple of hours. And so if you could just hit the highlights of your presentation and then take whatever questions counselors might have.
Okay. Right now, we're waiting for Lisa and Irene. They'll be presenting.
Am I not showing up?
Oh, I can't see you.
Oh, okay.
Morning.
Morning, Irene.
How are you?
Go ahead if you're ready to start. We're time's
Oh, sorry.
tight.
I thought we were the second group after 9, so I apologize. Okay, I'm
Yeah,
just
no,
trying to get back to my video. And
no,
Alicia should be joining us shortly.
I am here. I don't know why I'm not showing up, but can everyone hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
good morning.
if you could speak, whoever was just talking, if you could speak a little closer to your microphone, a little louder, that would be great.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and honorable council members. My name is Leisha Cotton Cornwall, and I have the pleasure and privilege to be chairman of the Museum of the Highwoods Board of Directors. For 60 years, our museum has been the heart of our community. We preserve the history of High River and the area that surrounds it. We welcome visitors from all corners of the world and provide a warm gathering place for our friends and neighbors. The Museum of the Highwoods stands as a symbol of the resilience of our community. We've survived fire, flood, and this year pestilence, staying strong and supportive. If you haven't seen today's edition of the Calgary Herald, our museum features on the front page with a photo of the High River Mexican community's Day of the Dead celebration at the museum. This year, there will be a particular emphasis on those we've lost to COVID, making this a celebration of past lives, our present, and a more helpful future. And isn't that what museums are truly all about? Museums are an important and relevant part of any vibrant community, fostering a deeper understanding of our past, our changing present, our culture, our values, and providing an opportunity to contextualize our history, interpret old traditions, stories, and facts, and define how the past has made us who we are today. I'd like to thank Town Council for your continued support, which makes the important work of our museum and the Visitor Information Center possible. I hope our partnership will continue for another 60 years and well beyond. Without further ado, I'll turn the spotlight over to the director of the Museum of the Highwood, Irene Kerr.
Morning.
Hi.
Everybody see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, so I put together a bit of a PowerPoint. I was up pretty late last night. We had a pretty busy weekend here with Halloween. It was a great weekend, but I feel kind of hungover today. So anyways, I didn't drink, but I feel hungover. Anyway, so I'm going to share my screen now. Hopefully this will work. Oh, it says you cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing. I think I still have Chris's screen on my, no.
I will try and get that unshared for you, Irene.
Okay.
Oh, just give me a sec. I can't seem to.
I'll try again. Oh, I think I can do it now, Chris.
Okay.
Yeah. Can everybody see my screen now?
Perfect.
Okay. So let's go back into this. Technology is so stressful. So this is actually my 12th budget presentation. And I have to say it's the craziest one I've ever done. Done in so many different places. But anyways, I thought I'd put this up to start the presentation. And this is actually our museum resident squirrel Hoover on a 35-degree summer day. And I'm thinking that's kind of how we all feel about 2020. I just want to lay somewhere and eat sunflower seeds. Anyways, so I'll just move ahead here. So thank you very much for letting us present today. It was very difficult. Everything is difficult, as you all know, and to kind of plan is really hard, but we're doing our best here at the museum to keep positive, move forward. We actually kept working really hard right through the pandemic and the quarantine. The museum work itself never stops, and we're just doing the best we can. So I just wanted to start with this slide right here. This is actually one that shows how much our visitor numbers have gone down this year because of the pandemic. The biggest difference is because of our international visitors, and also we haven't done any actual school programs. So that's probably why the big drop is. We had a lot of Canadian visitors. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. Once we did reopen on June 20th, we had quite a few visitors from across Canada. And so it was a little bit of a surprise to me that people were still very generous this year with their donations into the donation bin. I have a few theories about that. The first one is we had, such amazing staff, and everyone that comes here loves the museum, and everyone who comes to High River absolutely loves it. They say, oh, it's such a beautiful little town. So I think, let's move on. So I did this last year, and I think I'm all over the map, but I think to kind of focus on things, I like to kind of go back to our strategic plan. Now, our strategic plan is a living document. We're constantly updating and changing it, and now more than ever, it needs to be something that we can refer to and kind of use as a roadmap for what we're doing, just to kind of keep us on track. So I'll kind of just jump over some of this. We didn't have any in-house programs. And so the first thing we actually had was this weekend where we had a Halloween event. Of course, our major focus is on safety and COVID. And so we hadn't really had any events. So we decided to do like a ticketed event. We only allow one group in the museum at a time every day. And for the Halloween event, we just kind of translated that into, we had a half-hour timed increments. So a group would go through, a family group together could go through. So it worked out really well. And we're kind of hoping to do that at Christmas, and I'll explain more about that later. I did start doing some offsite seniors programs in September.
Irene, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. Sorry about this. We are allotting 10 minutes per group.
Okay.
You're now at
10
10 minutes.
10 or 20 minutes.
No, I was told 10.
Okay,
So,
I was told 20, but I'll speed it up. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
the warning.
Thanks so much.
Because everyone knows me, I could talk about the museum all day. So anyways, we've kind of are focusing on our 60th anniversary. We're going to start doing that now. And we have Santa's workshop coming up at Christmas time. So collections, I just quickly run over this. I can send this PowerPoint over if you want later. We're continuing to have a lot of accessioning going on. We had our 3 major accessions this year. We accessioned the entire High River Times archives. They were destined for the dumpster, and we actually accessioned all the newspapers. And the Times Post Media actually gave us a whole bunch of shelving, so it was a really nice acquisition. We received paintings from Joyce Marshall, and just recently we received the Superman cape from Superman 3. So it's going to be a great attraction for our visitors. So we try to increase awareness of the Museum of the Highwoods. The thing on the left, the post from Instagram, is Storm Release Films in the States, in Rhode Island, and they're working on a series that will be on the Travel Channel. And we were the first ones, and they will be, once everything kind of settles down, hopefully, they'll start broadcasting these. They're about a 2-minute long promotional video. Amber Marshall is our sponsor for that, so she promotes us. You can see our social media has been extremely popular. We were really happy to provide something, a distraction for people, and it's been really great. We'll continue with that. We're redoing our website by the end of 2020. How am I doing? Am I going fast enough?
If you could get into the money, if you could get into the ask, that would be very helpful.
I would actually, I have Tony Ann, our treasurer, here, so I would welcome questions. One thing I will say is that this year we've been extremely fiscally responsible. We've cut spending in all our areas. We no longer have cleaners, recycling. We're kind of counting our pennies, and that will continue until next year. It's our 60th anniversary, so we will be searching out other fundraising opportunities and sources revenue. So I might leave that for Tony Ann to answer any questions that you might have.
And Irene, I really appreciate your understanding on this, and I appreciate
no problem.
your willingness to adapt to technology and the times as you've been doing all year. But
no worries.
It would be great
if
we
go to questions then, maybe. Do we have time for any?
Well, I'm just talking for a second. I just wanted to urge you to send that PowerPoint to Kara, and she'll distribute it to all of us. And if we can hear from the treasurer quickly, if you'd like us to.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning. I don't think we're asking for anything more than what is going to be available from the town. It's been a difficult year, and it's going to be continuing to be a difficult year. So I'm not, if there's any questions regarding our budget or our financials, I'm happy to answer anything.
Okay, any questions from council? I see Councillor McMillan's hand is up. Go ahead, Councillor McMillan.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I don't have a question. I have a comment for all of the museum representatives on Zoom today, how grateful I am for everything that you guys have done during such difficult times. Your enthusiasm, just the way you've rolled with the punches, I guess, just like everyone else, but just absolutely fantastic job. And I hear positive feedback all the time from the community. So just great kudos to all of you.
Thank you.
Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Masterman. Yeah, just to echo Councillor McMillan's comments, and I appreciate you coming forward with a revenue neutral budget request this year. I see you're going for 149,300, and thank you for sticking with that. One question, maybe more for administration with respect to this. They're also shown as Museum of the Highwood having a VIC, and they're under community group funding. I may have asked about this before, but I thought we had a fee for service contract in place to cover off the VIC, and I'm not sure why that would be under community funding. There is a contract and they are providing a service to the town. That was my question. I don't know if anybody can answer it right now.
Councillor Kinghorn, I can answer that, and Leanna, jump in if I'm incorrect, but it all gets coded to community group funding as it is, even if there is a contract in place. So it just shows up on that list.
That is correct.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Kinghorn?
Yep, thank you. I'm good.
Okay, your hand's still up. And I don't see any other, sorry, Councillor Nychek.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Masterman. In regards to funding from the budget that you guys were allotted this year, and the comment on decrease in programs that happened, maybe I'm not sure if this is administration or if this is the museum, but was there a, I don't want to call it a savings of funding, because with this COVID environment, I'm not looking at it as a savings, but is there budgetary allotment that wasn't used for programming that was still available to the museum? Is that a clear enough question?
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking.
Okay, so you were allotted $149,300 in the budget for 2020. Yep. There was a comment made about no programming really happening up until this past weekend with Halloween. So I'm sure that some of the budget funding goes towards programming, correct?
Limited, yeah. It's a small amount.
Small amount? Okay. I was just curious if the allotment within the entire budget was still there.
Currently we're running, actually, because some of these programs haven't been running, we're actually able, currently in 2020, we are just breaking even. So there's been additional costs, with cleaning and what needs to be done for COVID and the screens and things like that. So I think it kind of worked itself out.
Yeah, I kind of assumed that there was probably something like that you guys might have shuffled funds around from one thing to another, like the COVID protection pieces that have to be in place. Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
I don't see any other hands up. So we'll, I thank you, everybody, for your presentation and for respecting the time constraints that we're under as well. And really appreciate it. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
And I think we'll, Kara, is the library represented yet?
Yes, I will let them in.
Perfect.
Hi there.
Good morning. It's Bruce Masterman here. Welcome to Council budget presentation Is this Mary and Jim?
Yes,
Hello.
not sure if Jim's here or not, but
Okay. Mary, just a reminder, I mentioned at the start of the session that each group has about 10 minutes, and because we've got 11 groups to go through, and we also have to have questions from counselors. So thanks so much.
sure. Well, I figured I'd keep it fairly brief anyway, because nobody wants a longer than necessary Zoom meeting. So thank you for asking me here today. And I thought I'd go through perhaps a brief timeline of the past year and what we've been doing at the library, and how the pandemic has affected things, and those kinds of things, and then move on to the budget if that's okay.
Yes.
So the year started off looking pretty bright. We had higher than normal visits in both January and February of this year, about 1,900 people in total, and we had 74,000 visits in 2019. And March was on track to be about the same as the previous year. But of course, things kind of fell off the rails. We closed to the public on March 17th, and then only reopened completely to the public on July 2nd, 2020. So during that period when we were closed, some staff worked at home on things like an employee handbook, which we didn't have at all, program plans, online updates about the library's status and e-resources. And most staff actually did work on site at the library during that point in time. And we made a number of improvements to the library and the library collection. So all items in the library, so that's over 25,000 items, were taken off their shelves. All the shelves were disassembled, all the shelves were moved, because some of the aisles were as narrow as 36 inches wide, which is not accessible for people in wheelchairs. It's also awkward for walkers. And in fact, two adults couldn't pass each other comfortably in those aisles, and they were very dark. We also relocated things so that collections that made sense together were actually together. So for instance, large print and audiobooks are now co-located on the same shelving unit, because those are basically the same market. We also created a discrete children's area. So it's sort of semi-enclosed with book bins, and it has interactive activities for kids. And the previous year we had changed the cataloging system for all of the children's books so that they are categorized into things like friends and family and the great outdoors and those kinds of categories, so that it makes it friendlier and easier for people to navigate themselves. We also made space to display the library's Gadgets to Go collections so that we could increase circ and visibility of that collection. And that certainly seems to have made a difference in the circulation for those. All collections were assessed and weeded. Collection names were added to various categories that didn't exist in the online catalog before. So for instance, Westerns, romances, biographies, so that if we choose to break out those collections in the future in more of a bookstore model, that is a relatively easy thing to do. Walls in the library were painted. The art collection was centralized in a gallery area in the foyer for greater impact. The circ desk was moved, and that was because it really wasn't functional for staff in terms of being able to move in and out from behind the circ desk. The move also made it possible for staff to greet patrons as they come in and have better overall sight lines of the library. Signage was installed for better self-service because not everybody wants to ask for help when they enter a building, so all collections are now clearly marked. And in general, it resulted in a brighter, more welcoming feel and a more functional space for patrons to use. And of course, in preparation for reopening, there were all of the changes around COVID restrictions. So removing furniture, putting it in one of the meeting rooms, separating the public computers, placing plexiglass shields around the circ desk, putting out masks for patrons, and other measures. Yeah, and I guess a few bright spots in that period were we received funding from Shoppers Drug Mart for a temporary project to put menstrual products in the washrooms at the library. We also received funding for a book bike, which received quite a lot of publicity. And that will act as a mobile library branch in the spring and summer, so that we can perhaps offer delivery programs, so that we can offer services to people who might not have transport to the library in other areas of High River, and perhaps also delivery services for seniors or for seniors' homes. Let's see. Curbside Service started on June 1st, and that was, it was steady, but it wasn't super busy. But we did open to the public on July 2nd with appropriate safety measures in place. Another thing that happened too was we acquired a 3D printer, and that has seen some use from the public too. Just last week, somebody printed a shop vac part here. I haven't heard back how it worked for him, but that's been part of fulfilling the library's strategic plan for developing 21st century skills. And some of those other things that we did also fulfilled aspects of the strategic plan, like developing flexible, welcoming spaces, and residents being able to find collection items, and increasing circulation of non-traditional items. Foot traffic is down. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Being closed for 3.5 months has a big impact. We're probably looking at around 42,000 visits this year, I would say, as opposed to, again, the 74,000 that we saw last year. Circulation was down, although eCirc was up. But the past 2 months, we've had around 2,300 more circulations than we have in the past, and I expect that to continue till the end of the year. And this fall and winter, we're focusing on programs to kind of reduce academic gaps, to enhance educational options, help with homeschooling, those kinds of things. And yeah, and we're doing also weekly take-home kits that parents and children can pick up, and those cover a range of ages. And I've capped that at 50 kits a week for budgetary reasons, but all 50 are going. So we are touching, potentially up to 50 families. Probably some of those are families with multiple children, but so those are very popular as well. I don't know. The summer program was largely online this year, so attendance did drop. We had a couple in-person events that were quite successful, but again, we have to keep everything small, and having the programs as we have them right now, they're smaller and they're repeatable, but it is sort of staff and time intensive to do it that way. We were lucky enough to carry over Canada Summer Jobs grants through to the end of December. So we do have additional student help until then. And I'm hoping to carry another grant through to the end of March. Let's see.
Mary, sorry to interrupt you. You've got about 2 minutes. Did you want to speak directly to the grant request, or
sure,
just let it stand?
Well, I mean, the grant request, we're in the hole. There's no two ways about it. It's self-generated revenue has fallen. Memberships are down very slightly, but we're not in a position to charge fines because different libraries have different quarantine periods and different fines. And so the system isn't, even though the fine levels are entered, the system isn't equipped to do all that automatically. And so, and in terms of having staff calculate it, that's not really possible. One of our big fundraisers is the Riverwind concert that happens twice a year. That's not happening next year. We have additional costs in regard to COVID with masks, gloves, cleaning materials, those kinds of things. And things like exams there are fewer to invigilate. That was a service that we charged for. We lost a long-term room rental. Kumon is not continuing their business in town, or the people who were running Kumon. So that has disappeared. That's about $4,000 a year. And it's hard to see a replacement revenue stream for those things. Right now, the board is planning to cover that out of reserves, the deficit, but even with an entirely flat budget, aside from a carpet cleaning, because we weren't cleaning the carpet every year, because that was an additional $1,500 a year cost. But even with an entirely flat budget, we're still looking at a deficit.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from council for Mary? Councillor McMillan to start.
Thank you. And thank you very much, Mary, for your presentation. I just wanted to give you some feedback from the public, how very happy they are that the library is reopened, especially for mental health and well-being. And the other day when I was there, it was nice to see there was two, in the span of me just waiting for 20 minutes, there was 2 different groups of people getting library cards. So I thought that was quite positive. So.
Yes, it is. And a lot of people got cards while we were closed too, so that they could access e-resources.
Thanks so much. Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Masterman. I just want to send out kudos to Mary and her team there. A real efficient use of juggling time during COVID and improving the library. Just hats off to you. I think you jumped on that really quickly and kept everyone working and busy and just made the facility a better place for when it was ready to open up. So thanks to you and your team.
Thank you.
Mary, thanks very much for your presentation this morning and for being respectful of our time constraints as well. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon, I guess,
yeah.
or good rest of morning.
Whatever it is. Thank you.
Yes.
You too. So are we going to the Memorial Center?
I have them. I will admit them. Just one moment.
Sorry, do we have somebody, Kara? I see.
Yeah, sorry, we're just coming on here. Sorry, just bear with us for a minute.
Okay, let me know when you're ready, please.
We're just getting our presentation up here.
Okay.
Can everyone see our screen there?
Yeah, we can. And just a reminder, we're giving all the presenters 10 minutes plus questions from counselors. So we've got quite a number to get through this morning. So thank you.
We'll keep it as short as we can. So I'm Jen, for those of you who don't know me, and I do have Tim with me here as well. So we're both here, and I think we'll just get going here. So just to say thank you to Mayor and Council for letting us come to you guys and present. We greatly appreciate that. So we'll just go kind of right into the financials here. So 2019 was a relatively good year for us. We made great use of our operational funding for operational costs and building maintenance. 2020, our financials looked a little different, as you can imagine. We all know 2020 kind of threw everyone a curveball. We more or less were closed for about 4 months. We have been doing some private events now, so that's been interesting for us, but we're feeling that out, and it's been going really well. In the meantime, we've been trying to stay as community involved as we can, working with some other vendors just to do shout outs, do some photo opportunities, photo shoots, things like that. We ran a coloring competition, and we participated in the Light Up High River Halloween edition. So that was really good. All right, so, and then for 2021, obviously, we've presented a very conservative budget. Obviously, we have no idea what to expect along with everyone else. We've more or less based it on the current guidelines. You know, like we tried to keep it as conservative as possible for going forward. So, but we've also been looking into some COVID measures, dividers, things like that, where we might be able to better utilize some of our spaces for the short term, but then also they would be measures that we would be able to carry on long term and better utilize our spaces for the long term as well. So we've been researching some different options there, and we have some pretty cool ideas, I think. So that could be really cool for the future as well. So okay, so that's kind of just a bit of a breakdown for 2020 there. Again, these were just done from January to August, as that's when the budget was kind of done based on. So we kind of just did everything based on those numbers just to keep everything consistent there. So that's kind of where everything was at for 2020, January to end of August. And then that's kind of our projection there for 2021. Again, very conservative, just as we don't know what to expect. And that's kind of just the breakdown there for 2021 for the additional grant request there. And then just, yeah, for that additional amount, we are well aware that it is quite a large ask. So we had some kind of additional options that we wanted to present as it is such a large ask. One being that it just be like a one-time COVID allowance just to get us through next year. Another one that we had wanted to propose was maybe, you know, we just don't have the additional ask, and then later in 2021 we reassess where we're at and maybe have an option of asking for additional funds if required. And then a third option might be that we could work together with the town and the Parks and Rec department to possibly shift some of the overflow programming from the Bob Snodgrass to, you know, just cover some of our overhead. So that was and just an additional option there. So just wanted to present those. And that's everything. We just wanted to say thank you guys again for having us present, and we look forward to working with the town and having, you know, a better relationship with our liaison and our license of occupation for the future.
Jen, thank you. Thank you very much. I think it would be really helpful if you could email that presentation to Kara and she could forward it to all of us as well. And I just wanted to very quickly say that I think if you were to market buttons that said cautiously excited for 2021, that's a great phrase. I think you would make $1 million. So I would invite questions, Councillor Nychik.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Masterman. Thanks for your presentation. Appreciate it. In regards to the 48,775 to get through COVID, how do you determine your 48,775?
So that's kind of just additional over and above the amount that we would quoted that we would get. So that's just kind of our budget, just based on what our budgeted expenses would be for 2021.
Over and above what they normally are?
No, not what they normally are. Just sorry, just it would be the difference between our sort of our proposed budgeted revenue for the year.
The revenue shortfall.
Yeah, so it's a revenue shortfall. Yeah.
Okay, so you're looking at what your past revenue history has been, and you're saying you're going to be 50 grand short based on everything you guys do.
Yeah, based on that, as well as events that we have on the calendar as well.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any other questions. So Jen, we'll move on, and
Mayor
really...
Masterman, Mayor Snodgrass had his hand up.
Okay, sorry.
He did have a blue hand.
Sorry, sorry, Bruce. Not real critical, but to Jen and Tim, I'm quite surprised it's only a $48,000 ask you're looking for to cover off your lost revenue. So you guys have not been able to do much over there. But I do want to say, Jen, the way you guys handled, we had a service there on Friday. The way you guys handled it was exceptional. It was safe. You know, everybody wore masks, and you're doing a great job. And we did have 100 people in there, and we had them all separated. So I just wanted to give you a little shout out there as to how impressed I was with how you handled that. And, you know, we're learning our way through this, and hopefully we can bring back a little bit more user revenue into the facility, because it's not easy right now, but people are trying to find different ways of doing it. So Alana and I were very, very happy with doing it, and it's something that we would recommend in the future for people that want to have services in there. So,
thank you very much.
Yeah, and the only other question that, you know, the only other piece that I would say as a user that we need to get sorted out is the internet connection. It's
you betcha.
We're right on the very bottom of the scale as to what's needed, and when it's big for us to be live streaming these services over there, and we had 465 people watching on our live stream last week. So, but it's important that we get good internet over there. So
yeah, absolutely.
We'll figure that out and get that going, because anybody that comes in to use that place absolutely must have good internet, and on a facility like that, I think it's important. And this one's always weird to me when you guys are coming in and saying thank you very much for what we do for you, which isn't much other than here's a check. My thank you is thanks for running the operation and the building that the town actually owns. You guys are the ones that are taking care of it for us. So I really appreciate that you're running it as well as you are right now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I'm sorry I didn't see your hand up. Jen, thanks very much for the presentation.
Thank you, guys.
So Kara, are we on to Handy Bus now?
Yep, just one moment. Terry's in the room.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Terry. Thanks very much. It's Bruce Masterman here. Welcome to our budget presentation. Just a quick note that we're asking people to limit their presentations to about 10 minutes and then questions from council as well. So go ahead, Terry, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thanks, Bruce, and thanks to Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you to council for setting aside this time. We're quite pleased with the operation of the handy bus for the last year, although it's been a challenge. Everybody has faced challenge, and we feel that we met it. First of all, I'm quite pleased to say that the handy bus did not shut down one day of operation during the pandemic. We operated every day. Now, some days we weren't very busy, but we were able to operate. We accessed the PPE that we needed. We were buying hand sani and wipes by the carton and by the jugs full, but we were able to keep operating. The van was sanitized after every client to keep people safe. The drivers wore masks right from day one, and we were limited to one passenger only. And that passenger sat in the back corner with opposite from the, or not right beside the driver, but behind the driver. So that limited contact. In April, a year ago, we did 663 trips. This past April, we did 144. The math shows me that that's about, our ridership was down by about a quarter. However, having said that, every month since April through to the last statistics I have is for September, we have increased our ridership from April through to the end of September. In fact, it's almost doubled. It's still not back what it was a year ago, but what I'm wanting council to understand is that our ridership is slowly increasing. The other thing that we were able to do is I was able to access a couple of outside funding sources. The Calgary Foundation and the United Way were supportive of an initiative we started. And starting back in April, in-town trips, we offered at no cost to the clients. So that means every time somebody phoned, they need to go to a doctor or needed to go for groceries, they need to go for a prescription. Any of those trips were in fact at no cost to the client, and that was due to the additional sponsorship of the United Way and the Calgary Foundation. So we're quite pleased. Things are slowly recovering, and we're able to continue operating. We're very much appreciative of the sponsorship and the grant from the town of High River. That's a very vital part of our funding sources, and we're looking forward to continuing. Looking into the future a little bit, we've already planned at the last Board of Directors meeting, we planned again to offer services Christmas Day and Boxing Day like we have the past couple of years. Our drivers are cooperating in that, and by sharing the load, it's not a big burden on anyone. So once again, thank you to Town Council for their continued support of the High River Handy Bus. We all know that this is a vital service to the citizens of High River, and especially those citizens that have any mobility challenges. And Councillor Masterman, I'd be open to any questions that any of the councillors would have at this point.
Terry, thank you very much for your presentation and for all that you guys do in town as well. Very much needed service, and I appreciate that. I'm looking at the list. I don't see any hands up from councillors. Am I missing anybody? No, I guess you're off the hook, Terry.
Okay.
Really appreciate you you're respecting our time constraints this morning and our technical requirements as well. So thanks so much.
Okay, and thank you.
I've just let Glenda in.
Sorry, it's Glenda, right?
Correct.
Okay. Hi, Glenda, can you hear us? You might be muted.
Yes, I can hear you.
There you are, Glenda. It's Bruce Masterman, Deputy Mayor this morning, and appreciate you joining council to present on behalf of STARS. And just a quick reminder, we're asking people to try to keep their presentations to 10 minutes, and then any questions from councilors after that. So go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'll do my best here. Thank you so much for having me. I take it that everyone can see my presentation then? No?
Not yet, we can't.
Okay, I was sorry, I was thinking that you had it on your end.
Yeah, sorry.
Can
we were given the presentation.
Yeah.
And here it's up now. So
It is. Okay, great. So you're looking at the hands that save lives, correct?
that's correct.
Okay, we will get started then. It seems like I have a bit of a delay. All right, COVID-19. COVID-19 pandemic has changed all our lives. STARS is a physician-driven organization, and our priority is to protect and maintain unimpacted operations. We developed rigorous PPE measures and meticulous decontamination procedures along with buddy system oversight as a safeguard. STARS transport physicians and air medical crew are regarded as experts in the field of critical care, and the reasons why STARS was asked to participate in an international consortium to share learnings of COVID-19. STARS developed an online portal to provide healthcare professionals with advanced airway management and resuscitation protocols, as well as our transport physicians continue to advise rural medical health personnel on oxygenation and ventilation procedures. Approximately 12% of STARS missions are suspected and or confirmed COVID cases. STARS will continue to maintain a slow, deliberate, calculated approach to any reintegration strategy while continuing to serve critical needs of Albertans. During these most challenging times, we recognize that our municipalities are facing countless hardships and financial strife, which is only magnified by the fact that there are many who rely on you for help, including STARS. STARS is experiencing a significant decrease in funding in many areas, including government. The 10-year affiliation agreement with Alberta Health Services that provided 20% government funding has expired. In 2019, STARS received $9.2 million in government support. Taking into consideration the recent AHS HEMS review, which we are still waiting to hear the results of, AHS extended the agreement until September of 2021, with a projected total of $7.3 million for funding this year. STARS fundraising initiatives have all seen a decline. The 2020 STARS lottery did not sell out and reflects a $1.2 million lost revenue. The calendar campaign is down by more than half from last year. Site registration revenue is considerably less, and not surprisingly, with the magnitude of uncertainty that the energy sector is facing. With COVID-19 still looming around us, most of our STARS fundraising events have all been halted for the unforeseeable future. This equates to several $1 million in lost revenue. On the expenditure side, we see an increase in aviation due to increasing missions and the fact that we must move forward with the pilot training for the new helicopters. Administration costs have decreased by 3%. And like many others, though, we suffered the heartache of having to downsize staff members across all 6 bases. During this time of unparalleled distress and uncertainty, we must rely on our community partners now more than ever. The one area that has remained staunch and unwavering is the support that STARS receives from Alberta's municipalities like you. You continue to be a lifeline for STARS. We are truly grateful. Let's have a look at an overview of missions up to October 5th of this year. These include critical care inter-facility transfers from your rural hospitals and circumstances where the patient at a scene call required emergency transport to tertiary care. On occasion, STARS may have been requested to also assist RCMP with search and rescue, as these types of missions typically involve the need for emergency medical intervention. Aside from the May long weekend, the majority of STARS missions all occur during the months of September to March. So we are now upon a busier season. The Airbus H145 is a generational investment for the future. The BK-117 legacy fleet has served STARS well for 35 years and helped save countless lives. Unfortunately, it has been phased out of production. There is still a market for these helicopters, but not in the fast-paced, demanding life of critical care. We are still hopeful that we will receive some funds for the sale of this fleet. Careful analysis and risk assessment has identified that fleet replacement was inevitable. There is a total of 9 new H145 helicopters that will complete the fleet to serve Western Canada. You can see similarities, what appears to be minimal differences between the current BK-117 parked on the tarmac and the new H145s in the air. They both have twin engines for safety and wide clamshell doors at the back, and that's about it for similarities. The H145 is celebrated for its breakthrough technology. It has advanced avionics to reduce pilot workload, autopilot to decrease crew fatigue, especially in complex flight situations and back-to-back missions. The unique Fenestron tail rotor is ideal for precise 360-degree maneuverability. It also has increased fuel efficiency and complements a slight increase in speed over the BK-117, which will offer a greater range of up to as much as 30 minutes additional flight time, which is quite significant. To date, we have received 3 of the new H145s that are operational in Calgary and Saskatoon. The third one provides backup and has started to do training flights for other bases. We anticipate the delivery of number 4 and possibly number 5 by the end of this December. Airbus recently announced a new 5-bladed system, which will have increased lift and load capacities. So number 5 and 6 are projected to be the new 5-bladed system. We expect number 6 and 7 to arrive by possibly fall of 2021. And the order has been on the assembly line for the remaining 2. So we expect that we will look forward to the completion of the fleet, hopefully by the mid to end of 2022. To ensure no risk to operations, we approach completion of the fleet and the campaign, and will use possible sale proceeds from previous fleet to help cover any residual or unforeseen costs that may arise. The H145 helicopters cost $13 million each, plus there are associated costs for intensive pilot and mechanic training, the pool pilots required to cover the base pilots while they are away for that training, and additional specialized tools and ground control equipment. Provincial and federal government embrace the vision of a fleet of H-145s to serve Western Canada and provided funding for 7 of the 9 in total helicopters. Then, in the midst of the campaign, COVID-19 hit. Although the uncertainty continues, we cannot lose sight of the vision. The future of Albertans depend on it. Currently, an additional $14 million has been raised from dedicated individuals, corporate sector, and a few municipalities who, in addition to their annual operational support, also made a gift to Fleet. So the Fleet campaign continues with roughly $30 million left to raise. And we are hopeful that with the sale of the legacy fleet of the BK-117s, depending on what the market will be in the coming year and where it stands for US dollar, the rate for US dollar, we are still hopeful that the fleet sales will provide approximately half of that $30 million. So roughly leaving $15 million to raise.
Glenda, I'm not trying to rush you here, but you are at 10 minutes now. And so just a gentle reminder.
Yes, thank you very much. So this is the look of the future. These advancements will pave the way for generations to come. This is the new handheld portable ultrasound. We strive to stay on the leading edge of technology, and this is going to take us to new heights. This new handheld ultrasound is vital in the diagnosis of collapsed lungs, internal hemorrhaging, heart abnormalities, and possible heart failure. With early detection, it helps to avoid fatal outcomes. And our request is for your continued support in 2021 of $14,800. We thank you for helping Albertans to access the highest level of emergency critical care. We thank you for making a difference in many lives. Let us continue to nurture the life-saving partnership that we have built together. The most important time is now. What we as Albertans do or fail to do right now will be amplified in the future, and the stakes are undeniably high. We thank you so much for your support.
Glenda, thank you very much for your presentation and for respecting our time constraints, and also for your adaptability as far as presenting online this morning as well. I invite any questions from council members. I don't see any. Oh, sorry, Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you very much, Glenda, for your presentation. My question is, how much staff are in the helicopter at one time, and is it just one client, or how many patients can they transport?
We generally only transport one patient, but we have had on occasion, especially in mass casualty incidents, where we have transported 2 patients. So we do have that capability. The new helicopter will have that capability as well. There's always a second stretcher there. We would not transport 2 critical patients because we wouldn't have access to the full body, where with one patient, we have the nurse on the side seat and we're able to access full body. And I'm sorry, what was the first part of your question?
And how many staff are on board?
Okay. So it can be as many as, we always have 2 pilots for safety, always. That's been for the last 35 years. And we have a critical care nurse and the advanced life support paramedic. On occasion, for about 20% of the calls, we also have transport physicians that will fly as well, especially to a rural hospital for that physician-to-physician consultation. So it can be as many as 5 crew members at once, plus the patient.
Thank you, Glenda.
Thank you, Glenda. Councillor Nychuk.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Masterman. Thank you, Glenda, for your presentation. Always a critical piece of healthcare for our province and the other provinces. Looking at the financial breakdown, Saskatchewan paying for one of these new items for the fleet. Alberta, I thought last year, the previous year, I heard you mention that STARS is flying some missions in British Columbia as well. Is that correct?
We do serve northeastern British Columbia from the Grand Prairie base and southeastern, a corner of it from Calgary.
The provincial government there doesn't, I noticed the federal government has quite a significant contribution to the new fleet of 65 million, but I didn't notice a contribution from the British Columbia government. Maybe that federal piece takes care of that. Nonetheless, that was just more of a curiosity. Last question is, with the new fleet, does that require any modification to the landing facilities at any of the hospitals? I guess I'm speaking specifically to High River here, but is that something that has to happen, or are the aircraft able to land at current facilities?
Currently, there is, last year, like Alberta Health Services did do a review of a lot of their helipads. So that is ongoing, because not so much because it is the new model, because it's very comparable to the BK-117. If they were already landing there, like it's a 2 feet longer in the tail rotor, otherwise everything is comparable. But it was identified in this review with Transport Canada that there is a lot of helipads that were needing, previously already were needing some upgrades. So that's ongoing. We're working with Alberta Health Services and Transport Canada as well to try and mitigate whatever we can. But there are a lot of communities that have upgrades that are needed, whether it's just painting or, you know, maybe the tarmac is cracking, just different things like that. There are some as well, though, that have been closed. And that was not because of the new model, it's because of the upgrades.
Thank you very much, Glenda. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Glenda, for your presentation. We'll move on from here to High River Parades and Lights Society.
Thank you so much.
I have Hank and Ted.
I'm sorry, Kara, what was that?
Oh, sorry, I said I have Hank and Ted. Just one moment.
Okay, perfect. Hello, Hank and Ted. It's Bruce Masterman here. Welcome to the council grants presentation session. Just, I know I don't have to tell you guys this, but we are trying to limit presentations to about 10 minutes, and then questions from councilors as on top of that. So, so great to have you, and proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning. I hope Hank is still on there. We had a few challenges this morning. So thank you again for the storage facilities. It's been wonderful, I must tell you. We've made great use of that. We received from the town the sort of an advance, if you like, of $15,000 of the $30,000 that was budgeted. And then we've submitted the budget. I believe, hope you have that in front of you, and listing everything that we've expended the money on so far. And at the moment, we're, of the $15,000, we spent $17,316.28. So to get us through the balance of this year would be the $2,316.28. It would be always nice to have a little bit extra, but we know everybody's in tough times. The money has gone basically for items that we had pre-ordered for the parades and the lights in January, February, March, because we get sale prices. So since some of the things come from the US, we save the exchange rate basically. And then for having the virtual parade for Little Britches, and then we're going to be doing the same virtual parade for the Santa Claus parade. But then along with that, we're also going to be doing Santa in the park, so that kids have a chance to visit with Santa. So we'll be bringing the Santa Claus parade float into the park on the weekend of the 4th, 5th, and 7th, or 11th and 12th, and from 5:30 to 8:30. and we're building some stairs so that folks can social distance, but then the kids can walk up the stairs. Santa will be in the sleigh. They can still visit with Santa. They won't be able to sit on his knee, but at least they'll be able to visit. And then we worked it out with the museum because they're also doing Santa. They're building a Santa's workshop, so Santa will be inside. The kids will come and peek in the window and visit. So between Santa in the park and Santa in the museum, kids in town and the surrounding area will have a chance to visit with Santa. The skating rink is already set up in the park, and we're waiting till it gets a little cooler to put the bladder in because we didn't want it to fill up with leaves and junk before we had an extended cold spell. The lights in the park we start to put up on Thursday. Fortis is coming to help us with that. And then Friday, Saturday, we'll be putting the rest of the displays in. And we have a few more additions this year than we had last year. So the archways that went through the first part of the walkway into the park from Fifth Avenue and McLeod, we should be able to get lights going. We won't have the complete set of archways, but we'll have archways through the first part of the park, and then archways along the playground, and then at the last part of that walkway by the Lion's Kitchen, and then in between the two gaps of archways, we're going to zigzag the patio lights across the walkway. So we'll have that through the park, and then a couple more goodies that are still in the works that will be going up in the park. So we'll have all of that in the park. And then we're also going to be doing a porch parade on December the 17th, 18th, and 19th. We haven't quite figured out which section of town is going first, but basically one night we'll be doing the parade in, say, the northwest, the next night the southwest, and sort of the southeast from Center Street to 5th Street, and then the final night maybe the southeast from the east side of 5th Street. And so that will start roughly around 5:30. We've been in touch with the RCMP and the fire department, so they'll have a vehicle in it. And then also Jeff Langford and West Shaw are putting in Mater and Lightning McQueen. So it'll be sort of a mini parade, and then working our way through as much of the town as we can safely navigate the corners with the limited turning circle that the Santa Claus parade float has. So that's what we have in plan for it. The Light Up High River contest will still be going. We'll be doing that for the residences and the businesses, and that will begin. The details would be coming up on that after Remembrance Day. So effectively, after the 11th of November, you can go to highriverchristmas.ca, and it will be tagged in with anything that the town might have on their Christmas in High River site, so that everybody can get it all. So in a nutshell, there we are.
Thank you very much, Ted. I always love the fact that the very first Christmas tie of the season, we're going to see on you during this presentation. So it's a great tie.
Thank you. I was going to wear the hat, but the batteries died.
He's sitting too far back. I can't see it. Can you lean forward?
Yes, it's a great tie, Ted. Thank you very much. And
thank you.
And Hank as well. And if there's any questions, I don't see any hands up right now, which means I think you're off the hook.
Can't believe I explained it that well.
I think you must have, Ted. So thanks very much to you and Hank for being here this morning, for being respectful of our time, and also being so adaptable to the technology that we have to do this year. So thanks very much.
I love my computer. I love my computer. Anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a great day, and we'll look forward to seeing you out enjoying the lights and the porch parades and everything else.
Yeah. Thank you, Ted. Thanks so much.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye-bye. So are we going right to Shepherd Park, Kara?
So the next one on the list is actually Community Vitality Advisory Committee.
Oh, yes, I saw that. Sorry.
So I'll turn that over to maybe Leanna or Chris to speak to that.
So Leanna, are you presenting on behalf of CVAC?
I was just going to give council an update of what's actually in the operating budget. In 2020, we had actually had seed fund of $70,000 where we were going to fund 30,000 from reserves, from surpluses in CVAC from previous years. So that left us basically as a net cost to the taxpayer of $40,000. So we're starting 2021 with the seed money of $40,000. And I would like to throw this opportunity back to council and saying, what do you feel is realistic as your seed money for CVAC? We've had years where we haven't spent the entire funding, and that's why we had money put away in reserves. And then right now we do realize that this is hard times. And I know Chris can jump in at any time. I know him and Janelle have been working quite diligently on ensuring that we get quality applications for our CVAC funds.
Leanna, can you I'm sorry, I apologize if you just said this, but how much has CVAC spent this year to date?
I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I can get those numbers for you for the next council meeting.
And I should know what they are as well as a council rep, but I don't have them off the top of my head, but I know that there's certainly money left in the budget. The committee hasn't met since February, I don't believe. And so, yeah, Chris, did you have anything else to add?
Nothing major to add. I know Janelle and I have been talking about what should be the consistent, stable funding base for CVAC. And, you know, kind of on the page of keeping it at that 70 mark unless council dictates differently. Knowing that they haven't handed out 100% of the funding in some years and allowing them to carry over, make up that 70 from year to year instead of having a growing reserve that they were facing last year.
There certainly was some discussion on CVAC a month or two ago, some email chatter back and forth that maybe they could have a meeting. I don't believe there's any applications unless any have come in since that time, but there weren't any applications kind of pending. But I believe that we had a discussion with you at that time, Chris, about possibly messaging the fact that the CVAC's looking for some members and to fill some vacancies, and also maybe to invite some applications. And I'm just wondering whether that is still happening or what the status of that might be.
Deputy Mayor Masterman, certainly the advertisement for the members for CVAC has gone out, and we're pushing that information out there diligently. And I'd have to check with Janelle to see how many applications we've gotten so far this year, but I don't know. I don't think we've really pushed out the information on the application side of things.
Okay, Jamie.
Sorry, Councillor Masterman, but my hands up thing has disappeared off my screen, so I don't know where it went. But just to let you know, the High River Balloon Events Committee had a meeting last night, and they will be refunding $5,000 to CVAC as soon as we get the check signed, because we didn't use the entire $15,000 grant, obviously as a result of COVID and the balloon glow not happening.
Thank you, Councillor Kinghorn, for the update. Any other questions for Leanna or Chris on CVAC? Don't see any hands up or anybody waving frantically at me, so that was short. So really appreciate that. And now we'll move on to Shepherd Park. Good morning,
Paul Milligan
Paul.
has joined us.
Sorry, it looks like Paul Milligan, Kara, on behalf of Shepherd Park.
That is correct.
Good morning, Paul. Can you hear us? Might be on mute. Hello, Paul.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you now, Paul. Welcome to the council session on grants. And just a very quick reminder, you've been here before. We ask you to keep your presentation to about 10 minutes, and then there'll probably be questions from councilors on top of that. So go ahead when you're ready.
Oh, I'm ready now.
Okay.
Thank you, Bruce. And hello, everyone. Good morning. I'll keep it as short as I can. I'll kind of try to do a little summary if I can. If I may, I'll just back up to the full 2020 year and let you know some of our projects that we've tried to do. Keep in mind, of course, COVID has impacted Shepherd Family Parks volunteers very heavily. And what I mean by that is we're a little bit on the older side, so the volunteers are very cautious of COVID. So it's difficult to do any events or do a lot of extracurricular volunteerism. But anyway, in 2020, we were hoping to get the main bathroom of caretaker's residence done. We had it all lined up and the bids and such, but we were unsuccessful in getting that done, but it'll be ready to go as soon as we get back to work. Informational signs, we're working on those presently. It looks good, but they won't certainly be installed or completed by this end of year. Weather pending, it'll probably be in the springtime before we get those signs up. But they're coming along and they're in development and planning stage, and it's coming along pretty nicely. The overhead door in the shop building, that has been completed and installed and to budget. We estimated $2,000 and it came at just $2,100. Interior painting of Little Bow Schoolhouse, that wasn't completed in the spring. It was estimated $800, but talking to the painter, he's raring to go as soon as COVID's done, probably next spring. The finishing the kiosk, that hasn't been completed yet. However, we're working on a big map for the park to put on that kiosk. So that's kind of a blessing that once that map gets completed, it's a big map for the kiosk. We'll certainly get that kiosk completed and the shelter put around it. The visual barrier for the lift station, that's going to be a complex project, but we're ready to go on and get planning on that and get going. So likely when we get back to where we can actually physically meet on some of these complex projects, that'll be started probably sometime in the spring as far as the planning and development. So I apologize for a lot of those incompleted projects. However, I must say that we got a good volunteer base and they're really gung-ho about getting those projects up and running, started, completed, as soon as we can get through this COVID. And I look forward to that. Because that'll impact our 2021, but I think we still complete all the projects. For 2021, for the funding that we're requesting, it's for the lift station camouflage, the 5,000, the gazebo. We're hoping to get a gazebo in there, and that gazebo, we have no idea what it's going to look like, but there'll be a lot of planning that goes into place for that. And as well as we want to replace some trees along the west part of that property. They're getting kind of disease, shattered, and they need some trees taken out, some new trees put in. And that's going to be a nice little project for next spring and summer. We have a casino planned in 2022. The next casino, we had our 2020 Threshing Bee canceled, 2020 Heritage Day canceled. So a lot of our fundraisers were canceled. Albeit we started to help with parking at the Sunset Drive-In movie theater. That was a fun fundraiser. We haven't got the funds yet, but that'll be sometime this month. It's not a big fundraiser, but we're trying to do what we can out at the park, try to be as efficient and effective with our dollars as we can. So those are the kind of the projects that we have been planning for 2020 and hopefully planning for 2021. I realize that COVID has put a big dent in it and there's a lot of uncertainty, but our volunteers are enthused and energized to get going on all these projects. And with that little bit of money, and we certainly appreciate all the support you can give us, along with some of the fundraisers we're doing, we can really stretch those dollars out and make it very effective and efficient for the park. And it is a nice jewel for the town. And we really believe in the park, and our volunteers are really enthused. And with these projects working together, and with that support and that gracious support that you can provide us, we can make those dollars go a long ways and be very efficient. So in summary, that's kind of the projects that we've got lined up for the 2020 and 2021 years, and those numbers will help us out to achieve those projects.
Paul, thank you very much for your presentation, and you should never apologize for unfinished projects that you have no control over at all because of COVID. And I still think Shepherd Park is like the little train that could, like, it just keeps chugging along with a very devoted gang of volunteers, and as you say, it's a little jewel in town, and it certainly is. So, Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, and thank you, Paul, for your presentation. So, and just explaining, this is the third part of that funding that we had approved 3 years ago. So it was broken down into three components. So this isn't additional funding requested. This is just part of that total of 34,000 that was granted. And just to speak to the dedication of these wonderful volunteers, the amount of manpower and labor that they do so willingly, as well as I've been very impressed with their adjustment to virtual meetings. They've been meeting consistently and adapting to the technology. So it's just another sign of their resilience. So great group of people.
Thank you, Councillor McMillan. I don't see any other hands up. Last call. Paul, I don't see any hands up, so I think we'll let you go. I really appreciate your presentation and respecting our time constraints and your adaptability to technology under these conditions.
Well,
thanks very much, Paul.
Thanks, Bruce and Council and Mayor. Thanks for all your time and support. We certainly appreciate out the park, and like Carol and Bruce has mentioned, we'll do all our best through this time, and we'll maintain that park in a beautiful, professional manner. And thanks once again for your time today.
Perfect, thank you. So Kara, I think we're moving on to the Foothills Tourism Association.
That's correct, and we have Hugo Bonjean joining us.
Good morning, Hugo. Can you hear me? Good morning, Hugo. Can you hear us?
He can probably hear you. He's on mute.
Yeah, I think you're probably on mute, Hugo, if you're trying to talk.
Got it. Yeah.
There you go. Much better.
Right.
So thank you very much for coming here this morning or tuning in this morning to present on behalf of the Foothills Tourism Association. Just a very quick reminder, we're asking people to keep their presentations to about 10 minutes, and then there'll probably be questions from council on top of that. So whenever you're ready to start, just go ahead.
All right. I just want to, can I share my screen?
Yes, you definitely can, I believe, Kara.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's see where, share screen. There we go. All right. So can everybody see this presentation at this point? It says why Foothills Tourism?
Yes, we can.
All right, good. So thank you very much for having us. So Foothills Tourism Association, I just want to give you a quick update as to when we started. We started at the beginning of February 2019. We're currently the largest marketing coalition in the region with support from businesses, towns, the county, Travel Alberta, the Ministry of Economic Development, and then also Tourism Calgary and the Calgary Hotel Association. We've developed in our first year, we developed an all-encompassing website presenting tourism businesses throughout the region. And so we basically market just over 350 businesses and tourism events and venues in the region. We've established a sustainable income flow with contributions from municipalities, members, sponsors, the Calgary Hotel Association, Travel Alberta, and provincial grants. And we've developed in 2019 also our social media channels. We've more recently also developed 6 tour packages. The first basically tour packages developed for the region. In 2019, we raised $184,000 and in 2020, $192,000. The value of our marketing campaign this year it's actually not 230,000, it's 245,000. And then we've also conducted an in-depth markets research, which was, we contracted Western management consultants for. If you have not read through that study, I really invite everybody to visit it and read through it. It's very in-depth. You can find it on foothillstourism.com. If you go to the footer in about the association, the second image on the right is the entire study. And so it really is what we use to guide our strategic direction for Foothills Tourism. Our board of directors has been built out to really include representation from all stakeholders in the region. And so we have David Farron from Eau Claire Distillery, Brett Walter from Granary Road, Paul Hamer from the Saskatoon Farm, Stavrula Kangles from Spruce Meadows, Shelley Shorter from Tourism Alberta. We currently have just a change in board member from the Calgary Hotel Association, but Sol Zia has been sitting in for now. Sarah Noyes from Community Futures, Kelly Tuck as a voice of municipalities, myself, and then Jamie Hall is a new addition as the voice of the Chambers of Commerce in the region. Our meetings are attended by Andy Zillum and Yvonne Shaw from Travel Alberta as advisors. I'm going to just hit on the main headlines of the summer marketing campaign, which we've just completed. The website traffic has increased significantly. We've really started to amplify the stories of the region and have seen a lot of engagement in social media. And so the whole idea is to establish a long-term sustainable tourism model for the region. This is some examples of the creative of the past campaign. Couple of headlines. The click-through rates on social is 2.1%. That's significantly higher than the 0.3% average benchmark for the industry. You can, well, here you can see website traffic has been up 8,200%. Page views have been up 2,300%. So the growth has been absolutely, exponential in the last few months. Go through this. All the social media platforms are up about 20%, 15 to 20%. So we see very substantial growth there. These are some of the packages that were put together. So we worked with 2 hotels. One was the Marriott in Seaton, and then the Best Western in Okotoks. And then what I really want to skip to is, so we also now started to include the digital marketing platforms of our local media outlets. And then let's go straight to here. That's what I want to talk about. So we currently have a campaign running for Christmas in the Foothills. This is a huge economic opportunity. And we're launching the campaign later on this week. It's all the Christmas markets that have been canceled in Calgary represent an economic value of about $30 million and are visited by about 150,000 Calgarians every year. This year, by the cancellation of that, all of these people will be looking for safe ways of having some Christmas and winter entertainment. And at the same time, they're going to look for safe ways of shopping for unique Christmas gifts. And so we're launching this campaign. We've also organized a Facebook, closed Facebook group, which currently has over 500 members in the entire region, where businesses, towns, and just community members can actually all work together to give the visitors who come to Foothills the best Christmas experience ever. If we are succeeding in turning this into a successful campaign, then actually this probably will become an annual campaign. And I don't think I have to tell anyone that usually in winter, it's a very tough time for a lot of businesses in Foothills. And so this could turn that around. In our campaign for 2021 will focus on farm to table. As part of our research from Western Management Consultants, one of the important things that came out of that is that 91% of Calgarians are interested in local food. 70% of them would travel 30 to 60 minutes to buy from local farms and ranches. And 41% of those would do that 4 to 6 times a year. That's 370,000 people. If we assume an average of 4 people per family, that's 92,000 families. If they visit 5 times per year and on average spends $500 per visit in the region, which is not unreasonable because they would stop at many places and they would, have coffee or lunch in the towns as well. That's a potential economic opportunity, a latent demand basically that sits there of $231 million. And so our goal is to really capture some of that and bring some of those visitors on an ongoing basis throughout the, to the region. Our ask from the municipalities is to contribute $200 per business that we market on Foothills Tourism of that municipality. And so these basically have been the asks for each of the towns. So High River, the ask for High River would be $10,400. What you get for that, what you receive in return is our 2021 marketing campaign for Foothills. We have an estimated value and budget for that of $200,000. You will receive quarterly, it says quarterly, but it's probably going to be 3 times a year reporting on that, which would be October's, January, and May. You'll tap into a top team of strategists and marketeers at a very reduced rate. You leverage the community's money by growing it through the different income sources that Foothills Tourism has. We also have, we develop an increased understanding of the visitor profile. One of the things we've done in summer as part of our summer campaign is we put geofences around over 80 businesses in the entire region and collected demographic data of those businesses, of those visitors actually to those businesses via cell phones. And so we're starting to develop a very clear and very specific profile of the local visitors so that we can actually target that with our digital marketing campaign. And then ultimately the goal is to grow the visitor economy. This will benefit the community by growing employment opportunities, growing trade opportunities, growing business and investment opportunities, growing real estate values, decreasing crime, and decreasing dependency on Calgary's economy. So I hope we, High River supported us last year, and I hope we will be able to continue to count on that support, and let's develop this visitor economy in Foothills together. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Hugo, for the presentation. Any councillors have any questions for Hugo? I don't see any hands up. Hugo, I'm just wondering how much of the association's total budget is administration?
Actually, our administration is a total of about $13,000, and that includes updates on the website. So we run as a volunteer board. We currently don't employ anyone, basically. And that's been a very conscious decision of the board to make sure that every dollar we raise goes actually to marketing. And so in the $13,000 in terms of operating cost, that includes things like insurance, website updates, hosting fees, things like that.
Okay, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Hugo, I don't see any other hands up for questions, so I'll just thank you for your time and your presentation today, and being respectful of our time constraints as well, and for being so adaptable to the technology challenges of our time. So thanks very much, Hugo.
Thanks for having me.
So are we having a discussion on fee-for-service framework, or what's happening now?
Certainly, Deputy Mayor Masterman, we can go back to the presentation. We can talk about the fee-for-service framework. I don't think council is in a position to debate all these proposals that we've seen this morning. We can do that at a later date once we gather the feedback. And I also missed staff's priorities. I wanted to kind of summarize that with council. So we'll talk about the fee-for-service framework first, and then we'll go there. So I'll just share my screen again.
Okay. Perfect.
So I'm not sure if you heard of a fee-for-service agreement, or it could be a memorandum of understanding. But basically, taking a look at these community groups and listening to what they've had to say in the past, something like a fee-for-service may very well work for them, that allows them some opportunities to leverage additional funding and some stable funding for a specified term. So they're not always coming back to the well each and every year from that perspective. And so this would be kind of agreements that are focused on operational funding, not capital. It spells out specific deliverables that the town wants to see from that community group, be it the library, be it Shepherd Family Park, be it whichever group that it is. And it gives them the community group a defined term instead of a year-over-year kind of always coming back to present to council from that perspective. Now, what a 3 to 5 year term allows them to do, or if it's a year-to-year term, it enables them to better plan for their funding and try and leverage other funding sources from outside the region, be it the province, be it the federal government, be it the county, that they would be leveraging additional funds from. Now, they would still have to come back and report to council. They would still have to submit an annual report saying, this is what we've done, this is how we've measured it, we've met all the terms of the fee-for-service, and they'd also have to submit their financial statements for approval by council. Council can always request a presentation from the group, and if questions arise, we can ask those ones at any time, and if there's questionable concerns, then we can deal with that. But this is something that is a different framework that allows them to have some surety moving forward and better planning instead of a year-to-year kind of planning and always hoping for an increase. We can budget in increases if that's what council wants to do, or we can keep it flat, and then at least the community group knows that for whatever term it is, it's a flat funding arrangement from that perspective. And so it takes a little bit of the guesswork out for them and allows them to better plan. And the library is a great example of that, as a group that would be a great fee-for-service arrangement from that perspective, so that they could know what's happening for the next 3 years. So that's just kind of the framework that I just wanted to give out to council from that perspective, and so that council can start thinking about that. If there's any community group on this list that would be suited for that we can enter and start the negotiations and outline what the deliverables are, and making sure that it's spelled out in a very specific agreement. We do have an MOU that's very similar to fee-for-service with the Vic and the Highwood Museum and the Visitor Information Center, and that seems to be working pretty good, and we had that signed earlier this year. So yeah, it's a great framework from that perspective, and it provides them some surety. So just wanted to float that. It's a different idea, different concept, and it could help our community groups be a little bit more successful than they already are.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you very much. So Chris, when you mentioned about, for example, the library, because I kind of like the concept of a fee-for-service framework, but I'm just thinking about groups like the library where it's based on per capita, like through their own, like the Marigold Library System. So how would that work? Because their per capita number changes on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, we'd have to monitor that one on the per capita basis regularly. We're not going to see huge numbers increase on a per capita framework. We do have to inject the county per capita numbers in there once we get the shared services agreement signed, and that will be something that we'll have to monitor on an annual basis. And that may be something that sees a per capita increase that does take place for the library in particular, any of those ones that are on a per capita basis. But it takes a little bit of that guesswork away from them, and so that they can budget a longer term from that perspective.
Right. That's what I was just wondering, because I understand it with groups that are directly linked to the town, but I was just thinking with the library being under their own library act. So
they're still a service of the municipality. So, at the end of the day, we need to make sure that they're as successful as they can be with the funding that's allocated, and what that, whatever stable framework we can provide them may give them some better opportunities to leverage funding from other sources that is not linked to Marigold or to the province of Alberta. So different foundations, knowing that they have agreements in place.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands up.
Okay. I'm just going to go back a couple of slides if I can. Maybe I can't. Oh. Back to staff strategic priorities. I wanted to give council, something happened with my desk. Council, an update on staff strategic priorities. As council's aware, we ran you through this exercise of setting strategic priorities back in January, and it was kind of a brainstorming kind of process that goes through a filter and tries to get down to the kind of a top 5 and then the next 5, so to speak. So through June and July, we met with leaders, about 25 leaders and supervisors, to brainstorm operational priorities, and we had all departments and divisions participate. We had almost 800 operational issues or opportunities that were presented through that process. So a little bit daunting to figure out how to get to kind of that top 5 or 10. And so we took it through a first sort just recently, and we were able to get it down to 200 items, just under 200 items to have the staff members take a look at. And voting's still going on right now, but as of Thursday evening, the priorities as we sit right now, and there's a lot of ties in this group here, so it's I think there's 3 ties at 25 and another couple at the 18 range. So, but certainly the top kind of 5 that we see to date kind of line up with kind of our conversations. Asset management came out very highly rated. Records management, which I know council's heard of, has invested in software in the past, and spent a lot of money on that, and not really moved forward very far on that perspective. But we've got records management system in a process. Project management, service delivery, or project management delivery and process and standardize and improve that to both internal and external clients. Development of service delivery model with clear expectations, performance measures, and standards. A mobile town app, very specific, very task focused on that one. Improvements to the operations building and yard. Of course, our corporate culture journey. Green initiatives, including environmental planning and a healthy urban environment. Source water protection, which is foundation of a great community, is having good water to deliver to our clients. Sustainable funding strategy for community counseling, and a new town plan. So those 11 still need to be further sorted, unpacked, and confirmed. There may be subgroups within that, just like the process we took through council through. So that will be the next step and stage that we go through with the leaders. And once we're confirmed with those priorities, we'll develop some work plans and get those to council and further prioritize the list beyond those top 11 that we see right there, and see if there's additional priority setting that takes place on each division leader and supervisor, so that it kind of trickles all the way down. This priority setting trickles all the way down from council, all the way down to the work plans of our supervisors, leaders, and our day-to-day laborers as well. So I just wanted to tie that loose end together with council and open that up for any questions about any of those top 11 that council sees on that list.
Any questions for Chris? Sorry, I'm just don't see any hands up.
Okay.
Sorry, Bruce. Chris, on the sustainable funding strategy for community counseling services, what is that exactly? Sorry.
So that's finding the financial strategy to maintain the counseling program that we have through FCSS, and making sure that we can continue that for the long term. Funding streams through other granting agencies and foundations may be coming to an end, and through the province. And so, the desire is to have that continued ongoing in perpetuity for our organization, our community, and the outlying area.
Okay, so it is completely attached to FCSS?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Don't see any hands.
Okay. So I'll move on to the last slide I have. Oh, no, actually, tax rate scenarios. Leanna, we wanted to introduce you with the tax rate scenarios, and I'll turn that over to Leanna. If she's still there.
Of course, I'm still here, Chris.
You don't show up on my list, so I'm having problems with my Zoom today.
Oh, well, that's not good. So,
oops.
Oh, you need to go back for a second. So, in past years, we have presented council a total tax impact. So, one of the changes that we're looking at with this budget this year is, are we wanting to stay with the total tax impact, or are we wanting to looking at a tax impact on the municipal only, and having our education and our seniors as a strict flow through? Yes, we know it's coming from the exact same pocket. I know Chris has mentioned that he has seen in other municipalities where we send out a municipal tax bill and then we send out a separate tax bill for our requisitions. Here in Alberta, we find that we only have two requisitions additional. So for us to split the tax bill between municipal and then the requisitions, we'll see an administrative cost of additional mailings and just time on getting this done. We of course would have to deal with working with our financial software supplier on actually splitting this. But this is basically the start of the conversation on saying, okay, this is where we are right now. So at a 0% tax increase, we see right now the municipal portion on an average $300,000 home, we're looking at a $28 per year increase, and on the total tax of $42.63. So then when you go to the 1% tax increase, we are still seeing, we're seeing a $47 per year, or a total tax increase of $71 or almost $72. And it continues to go up by the 1%, all the way up to 4%. Also for our non-residential or our commercial base, right now we are seeing an average assessment of $900,000. We are seeing our assessment values declining. Everywhere in the province is declining right now. We are anticipating a slight shift in our proportionate share of the of our education tax amounts, not major from last year, but a slight increase on a proportionate share. And of course, these assessed values are as of July 1st, 2020. So this is the starting point of kind of going, is this where we want to be looking? Or do we want to look at just the municipal portion? Do we want to be talking total tax dollars? We know a lot of our surrounding communities, when they're talking about tax increases, they're talking total tax. So this is a shift from on our messaging if we were going to go to our municipal portion only. Or do we stay consistent with how we've been doing it on the total tax? And this is kind of the conversation piece on how we want to start talking with our residents and our property owners or business owners in town. So Chris, if you want to jump in at any time.
And any counselors who want to jump in, just jump in. You don't have to put your hand up.
Yeah, and certainly, Deputy Mayor Masterman, we wanted to give council these scenarios early on in the process of what the financial impact to the average household would be. And knowing, as previously stated, with assessments ranging in neighborhood from neighbors to neighbors, it's going to vary. So we've used the average assessment of $300,000 from a residential side of things and $900,000 for the commercial side. And so we wanted to give council that gauge of what that range would be from what a zero looks like all the way up. And that's based upon that revenue neutral approach of maintaining our existing levels of revenue from 2020 to now. And we have seen that decline in assessment that causes us a little bit of.
So I'm not sure who, sorry, Chris, I'm not sure who had their hand up first, but we'll go to Councillor McMillan first.
Thank you. I'm not really in favor of breaking it down for the reasons that Leanna said about additional administrative costs, and also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but our current assessments, it does detail what amount goes to education and the seniors requisition, correct? So that as ratepayers, we see how much is being contributed to each part.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so I wouldn't really be in favor of splitting it up. I mean, I think it's quite efficient the way it is right now. Just my feedback.
Mayor Snodgrass?
Thank you. Just on the splitting thing, I completely understand what Councillor McMillan was just saying, and kind of sitting on the fence which way to go, because yes, it's written on our tax assessments and everything else breakdown, but percentage of people that actually read that and understand that would be a little bit different too. When we talk about tax increases, everybody thinks it's municipal. I would say 90% of the people think it's municipal. They don't understand that education, seniors, all these other things are in there. So transparency and everything else, you know, I don't know, maybe it's better to break them out, but I'm sitting on the fence waiting for guidance.
I don't see any of the other hands up.
There's no need to make a decision how we do it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a separate tax bill. It could be simply an insert as a newsletter into the tax bill as well. That details that, you know, a good portion of your total tax bill is not necessarily a requisition from the municipality. So when you're seeing that tax increase, upper levels of government are also taking their share at a different point too. So, you know, it can come in different forms. It doesn't have to necessarily be a separate tax bill, but it could be a newsletter. It could be an insert, trying to share with the residents that, you know, your tax increase is not just us increasing taxes, it's other levels of government increasing the taxes as well.
Councillor McMillan.
Thanks again. And once again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought we added an insert in with all of our assessments that actually broke it down in a visual format where it was like a pie chart where it said this amount goes to such and such, this amount goes to that. Didn't we do that before, Leanna? Because like I'm sure I've seen that.
Yes, we have, Councillor McMillan. We did the Looney and we said, okay, this much goes to our municipal, this much goes to education, this much goes to our seniors. Over the past 2 to 3 years, there hasn't been any significant change. There was, I think it was 3 years ago when we saw the huge shift on the education. I'm thinking it was 3 years, it might be 4 now. The years kind of blur together after a while. We do that, but maybe we just need to have a little bit more verbiage around how much of the downloading has happened at different levels of government.
Right. Like I truly believe in the importance of the public information and to go about it through as many avenues as possible. It's just, I remember sitting down with some citizens long before COVID and going through that Looney diagram, and it helped because it makes sense to people. So I think as long as we utilize our proper communication channels, I just don't think we need to break it up. I think it's just all about informing people. So thanks, Leanna.
You're welcome.
One other piece, Bruce, to Councillor McMillan, you know, I get it. And at the end of the day, it's the ratepayer's responsibility to be reading the material we send out. We can make it as clear as we possibly can, but if you don't read it, you don't know, right? So like you said, if you sit down with people and explain it to them, it's pretty simple and they can understand it. But all comes back to your own personal responsibility to understand where your money's going. So.
I don't see any other hands up at all. So are we moving on to next steps, Chris?
Certainly, Deputy Mayor Masterman. We just wanted to get council starting to think about what, if council wants to think about a tax increase, what that impact is, what that number is. Once we get the community consultation process done, and that'll be what the next steps are, then that information will feed in to see where council feels comfortable based upon the community input on potential tax increase and what they feel comfortable with. If they feel comfortable with nothing, that would be a council decision at that point in time. So that's kind of what this scenario is here's the impacts. We aren't proposing, like I said, throughout this presentation, we aren't proposing any utility rate increases at this point in time, especially in the sewer and water side. Everything's going to stay the status quo. But this is where council's policy decision will be what is acceptable, what is affordable, and what's not affordable from that perspective. So, so when we talk about next steps, we circulated the draft survey and it's ready to be posted. We've gotten some comments back from members of council, so we'll integrate those into there. And if there's any other council comments, we'd love to have them by the end of today so that we can get moving on finishing this up. It's the same with the draft education articles I circulated on Saturday. If they're ready to be posted, we got a few tweaks to make still, but any council comments of what you're not comfortable with, let us know by the end of work today so that we can start cleaning them up and getting them ready to go out tomorrow and Wednesday. We do have articles. We got 3, 4, and 5 as well ready. We'll circulate those later this week. So that you have a look at those and making sure that you're comfortable with the information that's going in there. The survey will end November 25th, and then the survey summary will be to council on November 30th so that council can make informed decisions on a whole rash of different things, including the community group funding, the new initiatives, tax rates, and if there's more need for additional meetings, then we can have those kind of conversations. We do think that if possible, next steps, having another meeting November 9th to talk about the diversion, the utility rate diversion in detail and new initiatives would be, and potentially the capital plan would be great. I've just put 8 a.m. to noon. I'm not a fan of 8 a.m., just so everybody knows. I like getting up early, but 8 a.m. to think that early is sometimes difficult, especially when I don't have as much coffee in my system by that time. And if we need another meeting after that, we can set another date. We're trying to keep them to Mondays so that they're consistent with council's schedule. But we got a council meeting that day at 3 o'clock, but it looks like we won't have a COW meeting that day. So we have some flexibility on the 9th to shift that around to a little bit earlier in the morning and end by noon or 1 o'clock. The survey, like I said, will be, the post-survey meeting will be November 30th from 1 to 5. That's where we'll review the survey results, have a good conversation about those, what we see, and then the final reviews and draft committee approvals of all those things you see below: the operational budget, the capital plan, community group funding requests, new initiatives, draft tax rates, and any other items. We certainly need to hear from you as well about any projects that you've heard or come across that are interested in. We heard of one last week about 24th Street, so we're working on firming up that number there. We're going to probably ask for some early approvals to get some survey work out there so that we can get a really close number with what's the level course number for the paving on there. It's not simply paving, but because of the drop in grade, we've got some level course work which could significantly add to the price of what was in the capital budget. So we want to get those numbers to you and talk about that. And we want to make sure that we get good construction numbers for our good tender packages ready for early in the new year so that we can have competitive pricing for early in the spring. Lots of timing stuff that needs to be worked on and from that perspective. So those are, we do think that we need the November 9th meeting because we really want to get into the meat and potatoes about the diversion conversation. And then also any other questions from council. Like anytime there's a question or if we're going too fast, slow us down. We want to make sure that you all have the information and understand what we are sharing with you. We're still learning the best way to present the budget over the virtual world aspect of things. And so if there's a mix-up in communication or terminology or lingo, we need to know that so that we can clean that up, not just for you, but also for the public. We want to be clear and concise to the public as well, and put everything into plain language as best we can. So those are the next steps, and I'd like to talk about that November 9th meeting and what council's thoughts are on that.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. I do see Councillor McMillan's hand up.
Thank you. So just to confirm, Chris, about the water, that I can communicate with West Winds that there's going to be a 0 increase so they can work with their budget?
That's correct, Councillor McMillan. That's our proposal to council right now. If council, if council feels differently at this point in time, now's the time to let everybody know if they want to see an increase in utility rates.
I guess I would kind of like to put it out for council because just the timeliness factor so I can report back to West Winds, if that's possible.
Well, we are going to be having that discussion. Does West Winds have to know like right this second?
No, I wasn't sure if that was part of the diversion conversation. I thought it was that with administration recommending no increase, that I thought the utility diversion was another conversation.
Yes, the utility diversion is totally separate from the utility rate increase. It would not affect the utility rate increase whatsoever.
Okay.
Okay, but I understand, Deputy Mayor Masterman, but time is a little bit of the essence. So I guess I just kind of was trusting in administration if they're saying 0, that, but whatever.
Okay. And certainly from a water and sewer rate perspective, we don't see any need at this juncture. And especially if we get the new agreement signed with the county, we do anticipate a slight increase in revenue streams coming from those new rates.
Mayor Snodgrass?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
On the West Winds thing, Carol, it's tough for me to give you a yes or a no right now when we're halfway through talking about our budget as to what we tell anybody else. West Winds should kind of know that they have to wait for our budget before they can really narrow down their numbers. I think they do that every other year, but.
Oh, yes. It wasn't like they just asked me at the last meeting if I
Okay.
could give a rough estimate about how council was leaning.
Right.
So I think we were having this discussion today, so.
Okay, perfect. On the meeting on the 9th, Chris, I definitely think it's necessary. I don't like the 8 o'clock. It's a little early for me getting the family and everything else together because we don't have a committee of the whole meeting that day. I don't know, it's up to the rest of council, but bumping that to 10 o'clock, from 10 to 1 or something like that, I don't know. Just a little later, 9 or 10 o'clock, something like that. But especially if we're only talking about the diversion or utility rates, if we're only talking about a couple of key items on there, that we don't need 4 hours to do this. So
even if we went 10 to 1, that's, we still have 2 hours before council starts. So whatever.
And the focus would be to talk about that diversion and how to either use the surplus to our advantage to end that, or reduce the amount of time associated with getting off that, or maybe through the conversation we have we develop a framework that is acceptable to all the council to have a certain percentage of that utility rate coming into general taxation. I don't know that answer. Certainly the volume that we're seeing right now is probably more useful for our utilities. But that's a conversation that we need to have, and we want to have that conversation on its own without any distractions of other items, because I think it's a pretty complicated one.
Councillor Kinghorn.
Sorry, just gonna. Oh man, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Can
You may have answered already. I'm having all kinds of problems with my Zoom today too. So hearing your comments, Chris, is it necessary to have a 3-hour meeting to discuss that? Do you really think it's going to take us 3 hours?
No, I don't think so. I think we can keep that, but if we protect that time and we go over and we get into other things, then we might reduce the time somewhere else.
Okay.
Why don't we go 10 to noon if we need?
Yeah. That's fine by us.
If it goes beyond noon, well, so be it. But if we kind of got.
Councillor Moore, your hand was up and now it's down. I assume you don't need to ask anything.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And we want to recognize everybody's got their own schedule too. So, if the 9th doesn't work, the 16th is available too, and we can do the afternoon of the 16th. But we didn't put that on the list.
I kind of like the 9th myself, but
I think the 9th is fine. I agree, Bruce. I think keeping it on, we're all kind of committed on that day, but the 8 o'clock is early for, especially even with staff, staff all have to come in early, and whether overtime brings into the play, that's minor, but the 8 o'clock starts are a little bit early, and if we can get a couple hours on Monday to talk about the diversion and stuff. 10 to noon, I'll have to go.
Okay, so we'll book the meeting for November 9th from 10 to noon, and we'll go from there, and then we'll see where it goes from that perspective. Again, survey, any comments on the survey, email them to me, and I can get them to Kaylee to make those changes, and we can get live by the middle part of this week, and we can start our communications pushing that out to start gathering that public input from that perspective. And then after that, after November 9th, then we'll bring this all back to November 30th conversation with council and go through it in detail, again, on the operational budget, the capital plan, community groups, new initiatives, tax rates, and then anything else that council, if there are any other things that come up, please let us know so that we can prepare them for as much detail as we possibly can before the November 30th meeting. So if there's something that we've missed, let us know. We want to make sure that it reflects what you've heard on the street and what you've heard through conversations. And if there's anything that we've missed, let us know. And that's pretty much it.
Perfect.
Questions, comments, concerns?
I don't see any hands up at all, Chris. So I think we're probably done. I'll just declare it adjourned unless I need a motion. I think we're done.
Good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.